On the line with us is Steve Bannon. The Ministry of Truth is his new book, Democracy, Reality, and the Republicans' War on the Recent Past. Steve has been on our program before. He's also the producer of the Rachel Maddow Show and does just some absolutely brilliant yeoman's work over there. Steve, thanks so much for joining us and coming back and having written this book. I mean, it's just an absolutely brilliant summary, not only of all the very specific, I would argue, criminal lies that Donald Trump has told about himself, about this country, about his history, about his past, about his administration, about the situations in America. But also, you do a brilliant job of putting this in the context of democracy itself. Why this is so important. Why gaslighting is a thing, and that is being used. Why the absence of shame, for example, is so critical. What provoked you to write this book, Steve Bannon?
Well, it's great to be here. Thank you for having me back. I think I wrote the book because I was confronted with this avalanche of misinformation, of disinformation, of efforts to rewrite recent history, to argue that reality itself is somehow up for grabs. It wasn't just one isolated incident here and there. I think as part of my daily work with MSNBC and the Rachel Maddow Show, it became clear to me that there was a systemic effort underway, that this was not just an isolated incident, that this is a campaign, an effort to rewrite recent history, to target the integrity of recent history. And because of this avalanche and overlapping scandals, I felt compelled to write the book because I felt like this is a story that I think a lot of people just haven't heard much about. Let's
talk for a moment about the people involved here. I grew up, in a Republican household. My dad was a Republican. In fact, he was a Republican activist. Now, I'm talking about in the 1950s and 60s here, and the Republican Party was a very different thing back then. He was an Eisenhower Republican as a starting point, although he was enthusiastic about Barry Goldwater. In fact, I went door to door with him when I was 13 years old for Barry Goldwater. But I can't imagine my father or any of the people that he associated with, and I knew quite a few of them, sitting around saying, let's come up with some lies to tell the American people to either tar our opponents with a false brush or to whitewash, to obscure things that we have done, or to lie about what we intend to do and make people think that we intend to do something different than what we actually intend to do. I can't imagine that. Now, I can't imagine Newt Gingrich saying that. I certainly can't imagine, Roger Stone or Lee Atwater saying that. But, has the Republican Party just become filled with sociopaths, with people who are just, absolutely uncaring about the social, political, economic, cultural life impact of the work that they're doing?
I think this is a critically important question. I'm glad that you brought this up, because I think that for many Americans, there's a temptation to believe that somehow that the politics of today is the same as it's always been, that somehow there have always been two major parties, that they're always going to, one represents the left, one represents the right, and they're always going to disagree about various things and issues, and there'll be mudslinging and there'll be attacks and attack ads, and that this is all just par for the course. I disagree with that analysis. I think that thesis is wrong. I think that approach is to believe that approach is to turn a blind eye to the radicalization of Republican politics in recent decades. And in fact, of course, the intensification of that radicalization under Trump. I think that we're dealing with a qualitatively different set of circumstances. The Republicans that you grew up with, that in my own family, I have many of the same. My own mother was a Republican for most of her adult life. And I think that what you experienced is the same as what many of us experienced, that we look back at that era and we say there's just no way that Republicans of the 1950s and 1960s would even consider tactics like these. And yet, because of the rise of Gingrich and others in the 1990s, the radicalization of Republican politics has continued apace in such a way as to allow the rise of Donald Trump and this attack on what I would, as I describe in the book, this attack on recent history and the integrity of reality itself. It's a reminder that Republican politics has taken a right turn and they haven't looked back in recent decades. And so really, I think it's something that Americans have to come to terms with, because it's not the same as it's always been.
If you think of it like lessons from high school, right? Certain gangs or cliques or crowds, we're self-selecting, basically. You know, you get some bully idiot, you know, and the people around him want to be like him, and so pretty soon he's surrounded by tough guys and wannabe tough guys, and you know, normal people are not part of that clique, as it were. If that has happened to the Republican Party, because I mean, we're seeing people like, you know, Jim Jordan now wants to drag Judge Merchan's daughter before Congress to harass her. James Comer led a 2-year campaign to destroy the son of the president who is struggling with drug addiction. I mean, these people are just vicious, and it seems like the Republican Party has reached the point now where it has purged itself of the Adam Kinzingers and even the Liz Cheneys, who's pretty out there herself. I mean, you know, an anti-abortion extremist, for example. But it has purged itself of people who are at least willing to tell or acknowledge the truth. How does a political party, or any institution for that matter, I mean, do we have institutional examples from the past, from business, for example, or other political parties or other countries? How does a party recover from having been taken over by essentially psychopaths? Certainly, you know, people who are willing to lie for you know, power and money. How do we recover from that? How does the Republican Party recover from that? And thus, how does America recover from this?
Well, yeah, this is really one of the most important questions in America today. In fact, I would argue it's one of the most important questions in Western politics today. Yes. You know, what do we do? And I think that history tells us that political parties change when voters tell them that they have to. That if Donald Trump were to succeed in the fall, and Republicans were to win up and down the ballot, the message to the GOP and its officials and its leaders would be to stay the course. It's working. American voters like what you've been doing, and they endorse your efforts, and that they want you to stay on that course. But on the other hand, if they were to lose, if Donald Trump were to lose in a significant way, if there were Democratic victories up and down the ballot, it would give Republicans an opportunity to reassess. Wait a minute, they'll say, this isn't working. We have now suffered back-to-back defeats in 2020 and 2024. Maybe we need to reassess, reconsider, and perhaps change course, because at that point they'll have suffered a significant electoral rebuke. And that is, of course, what's necessary. I mean, I'm not the first to say this, but you know, in order for the Republican Party to rise from the ashes, there have to be ashes. And in order for that to happen, they have to lose. I mean, ultimately, that's how it's supposed to work in any healthy democracy, that the power is in the hand of voters. And if voters decide that the Republican Party is off track and it needs to reform and it needs to overhaul its entire approach to the integrity of recent history and the integrity of reality, well, the way to make that happen is to vote against them.
That makes perfect sense. However, if the party has reached the point where basically all it is a bunch of grifters, I guess you know, the Mitt Romneys of the world need to come back into the party somehow. I just don't see it happening in any short time frame. In the book, you go through a bunch of specifics where Donald Trump or the people around him or the GOP more generally have literally rewritten history, literally lied to the American people. The Trump-Russia scandal, the 2020 presidential election, the January 6th. I mean, to the point now where Trump is, you know, offering one of his properties to celebrate these people. The Ukraine scandal in his first impeachment, the border wall. His horrible response to COVID, where Jared Kushner told him it would be an effective political strategy to blame it on blue state governors, the Trump-era economy. What of these do you think are the most clear, and we have about 2.5 minutes before we hit a hard break here, Steve. What do you see as the clearest examples that you want the American people to take away from your book or from Trump's activities here and the GOP's activities that years from now we should still be looking back on saying, I can't believe we let that happen?
Yeah, for me personally, it's the Trump-Russia scandal. I look at that as one of the most important political scandals in modern American history. And in Republican circles right now, that controversy has not just been discredited, they consider it ridiculous. But it's not. I mean, as I document in the book, we now know, based on the Mueller report and the Senate Intelligence Committee's findings, a Republican-led Senate Intelligence Committee's findings, that the Trump campaign sought Russian assistance, received Russian assistance, benefited from Russian assistance, lied about Russian assistance, and ultimately obstructed the investigation once it began into exploring the entire details of the scandal. And so, to my mind, the fact that a foreign adversary targeted the American elections and had compatriots, they had effectively Confederates on their side, partnering with them as part of this attack on our democracy, is unforgivable. And it's shocking to me the degree to which that story has been rewritten to a degree that Americans in general don't even know that this scandal still exists.
Yeah, well, Trump just ridicules it. He goes, Russia, 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 and as if to just brush it off. But as you and I are speaking, Attorney General Garland and the head of the FBI, Chris Wray, are testifying at this very moment. They're holding a press conference talking about how Russia's at it again. What can we expect from this election, and how hard is it going to be to push back on Russian interference in this election, given how it's been minimized in the past by Trump and the Republicans?
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad to know that U.S. officials are on the case, because it's a serious scandal that's not just related to 2016. They did it again in 2020. They did it in 2022 and 2018 midterms. And now we see the same cycle continuing again, where Russia believes that they're in a position to influence the outcome. And not only that, to benefit the candidate that they prefer, which in this case is Donald Trump again. And so it is something that Americans need to be mindful of, because if not, they'll just keep doing it. The only way to defeat them is to reject it.
All right. Yeah, it's a big lift to reject it, but it's an absolutely necessary one. Steve Bannon is the author. The book is Ministry of Truth: Democracy, Reality, and the Republicans' War on the Recent Past, and it is brilliant. It's relatively short. It's a very easy read. It's a weekend read. You're going to love this book. I strongly encourage you to get a copy. Ministry of Truth by Steve Bannon, B-E-N-E-N. Steve, thanks so much for dropping by.
Thank you.
Always great talking with you. And keep writing. We need your work.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. In addition to bringing you the Thom Hartmann Program here on Free Speech TV and Video Media Online, we also have a whole set of ways you can interact with us and tools you can use to spread the word about the importance of democracy and the threats to it in our republic. First, there's your daily homework. Sue Nethercutt puts together a daily email newsletter that has a link to every story I discuss on the air, so you can find my sources and you can share them with your friends. It's free, and you can sign up at thomhartmann.com. Second, I publish my daily take every day over at the hartmannreport.com website. That's also free if you want the daily 5 days a week rant in your inbox. No ads either. Third, we have the podcasts. There's the free 1-hour version of our daily show that's advertising supported. You can find that wherever you get your podcasts normally. And then there's also the podcast of the entire 3-hour show with no advertisements, and that's available by subscription over at thomhartmann.com. So check them all out at thomhartmann.com and hartmannreport.com. We still need your help. Here we go. We're almost toward the end here. And I don't know if you've noticed, but Free Speech TV has been theming each day of the fundraising drive. And today's theme is LGBTQ and trans rights, rights for the entire queer community. And this is something that you see so little of, sadly, I think, in the mainstream media. And Free Speech TV not only has, programming around trans rights and generally, the LGBTQ community rights, but also you see those themes and those issues across many of the programs, including this one here on Free Speech TV. So if that's close to your heart, that's another additional reason to call now, 877-378-8669, or make a meaningful contribution to Free Speech TV, particularly a monthly one if you can. With a $100 gift, they will plant a tree for reforestation. With a $200 gift, there is the Free Speech TV Cozy Kit, which includes an exclusive Free Speech TV cookie, my book, The Hidden History of American Democracy, American Dream, my newest book, and another gift that will be thrown into the package. With a $1,000 gift, you get all 10 of the Hidden History series books, all autographed by the author. And while you're doing that, while you're calling 877-378-8669 or going to freespeech.org and making your donation, and please do. Please do. This is a clip of Leslie Feinberg. You may not have heard of Leslie Feinberg. She died in 2014. She wrote a book called Stone Butch Blues in 1993 that made her somewhat famous, and then this absolutely pioneering piece in 1996 called Transgender Warriors, which, according to Wikipedia, quote, laid the groundwork for much of the terminology and awareness around gender studies and was instrumental in bringing these issues to a more mainstream audience. She described herself as an American butch, lesbian, transgendered activist, communist, and author. So here's a clip of Leslie Feinberg.
Lesbian, gay, bisexual, and trans people are no strangers to police and right-wing violence. When Matthew Shepard was murdered, we marched here in the streets 10,000 strong, and we made clear that we were no less outraged over the racist lynching of James Byrd Jr. in Jasper, Texas. Our march was viciously attacked. We were beaten and arrested by the same NYPD that lynched brothers Doris Munn and Amadou Diallo. An injury to one is an injury to all. That's why we fight to free Mumia. And Mumia stands with rainbow flags. Mumia from Death Row called for unity to stop anti-gay murders. It took courage for him to stand up against gay bashing. Well, that's his merit. That's why he's a leader who inspires so many communities. Now we must also fight to save Jalil Abdullah Al-Amin, formerly H.Rap Brown. Georgia is now seeking his execution. And why? In order to deal a blow to the rising progressive movement. We must not let ourselves be divided. And that's why we must unite as one fist in greater numbers in order to deal a death blow to racism, police brutality, right-wing violence, the death penalty, and slave labor in the prison industrial complex. And we who believe in Mumia's freedom shall not rest until it comes.
That was Leslie Feinberg, and one of the people who really defined an awful lot of, the modern contemporary ways that we're looking at issues around LGBTQ and trans rights. Again, Free Speech TV is one of the few places where these sometimes, in mainstream media, they might refer to them as marginal issues. If you're a member of the queer community, it's not marginal at all. Dealing with issues of race, dealing with issues of gender, dealing with issues of fascism and politics and corporate power. These are the things you'll hear here on Free Speech TV that you will not hear on the corporate media, on the mainstream media, that you will not be reading in the New York Times and the Washington Post or your local newspaper. And that's why it's so important to be supporting Free Speech TV, or it's one of the many reasons why it's so important. This television network and those of us on this television network so appreciate your support. You make this program possible. You make this network possible. You keep us on the air when you call 877-378-8669, or when you go to freespeech.org and make your contribution, whether it's a one-time contribution or whether it's a committing to a regular monthly, and whether that regular monthly contribution is $5 a month or $50 a month or $100, whatever works for you. Free Speech TV will make it happen. And that is the foundation of keeping this network going and keeping, the good message out there. So please call now. Please go to freespeech.org now and make your contribution. Free Speech TV needs your help. They need you now. Thank you.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Hey, welcome to the program. We got a lot coming up today. In the first hour of the program, in just a few moments, Representative Pramila Jayapal will be with us for the entire hour, taking your calls. The current chair of the Congressional Progressive Caucus. The phone number, if you want to get in the queue, lines are open, as the old saying goes on radio, 202-808-9925. In the second hour of our program, a call to arms. What does Trump's pardon pledge have to do with the rise of militant extremism? And are the people in these militias getting the message from Trump? Is what Joyce Vance said the other day actually true, that Trump is not pardoning them to thank them? He's pardoning them to say to future right-wing militia and violent followers of his, if you kill somebody in my name, if you commit violence in my name, don't worry, I got your back. We'll talk about that in the second hour of the program. Did Luigi get what he wanted as Delay, Deny, Defend, the book, climbs to number 3 on the Amazon bestseller list? What's going on with America's relationship with our health insurance companies? And also in the second hour, in an authoritarian world, you need propaganda. Welcome to Newsmax. I'll tell you, this is just an amazing story. In the third hour of our program, how Donald Trump secretly spied on House Democrats and journalists and got away with it. And will he do it again? Of course, you betcha. We'll talk about that. And Geeky Science, here's one thing you can do to improve cognitive performance for the day ahead and the day after. But our one guest for the day is Congresswoman Pramila Jayapal of Washington State, the 7th District of Washington State. Jayapal.house.gov is her website, jayapal.house.gov. Pramila Jayapal on Blue Sky, at pramilajayapal.bsky.social. And Representative Jayapal, welcome back to the program. It's so nice to have you back with us.
Thank you, Tom. It's always great to see you. And I did not know that full story about your dad, and I might have to start calling you Kale now.
Well, I didn't hear. We read a book report during the time that our commercial stations are in their commercial breaks, and I don't hear those. So I'm not. It must have been one of my books I was writing about my dad.
It was fabulous. It was all about how you came to healthy living and your dad's journey from ice cream to
oh, that wasn't me. That was a book by the heir to the Baskin-Robbins fortune. That was I'm forgetting his first name, but his last name is Robbins. And that,
I thought that
Ocean
was
Robbins.
you. And I was going to say I didn't know that your nickname was going to be Kale. But
no,
anyway.
that was not me. No, that was the son of the that was Ocean Robbins, who is the son of the son of the founder of Baskin-Robbins.
Yeah.
Anyway, so nice to have you with us. I'm curious your take on the state of politics today. We haven't talked since before the election, I don't think.
Yeah, it's been rough. I mean, I'm not going to lie. It's been rough. I think that, the first time around, it was possible to say that he was elected because people didn't know exactly what he was going to do. This time we had Project 2025 agenda clearly laid out exactly what he was going to do. We know that the cabinet that he's appointing now, nominating, is exactly what he said he would do. It's all billionaires. Last count, Tom, I looked, 10 billionaires that have been nominated for his cabinet so far, and the collective worth is about $350 billion with a B dollars. Just for context, Joe Biden's cabinet, which I thought was pretty wealthy in its own right, was 118 million collectively.
And 1/10 of a billion.
That's right. And so I think that, here's the thing. he ran on a platform that somehow he was going to lift up working people and poor people. I don't know how you do that if you are actually appointing to those positions, nominating to those positions, people who have rigged the system to make it work for them, and now are supposed to be in charge of actually creating a government that works for everyone. So I think on every level, from constitution, democracy, the xenophobia, the hatred, what you were just talking about with the pardons, very important, just the extremism, the fascism, the nationalism that is going to come at us is very, very, is going to require a lot from us in terms of rebuilding the Democratic Party so that we really speak to people and they can hear us in terms of what we're going to do to unrig the system and how we're going to fight for them. So it's going to be a rough couple, several years here. And I think we're all trying to get ourselves ready for that fight.
I'm curious, your postmortem is probably the wrong word, but your analysis of why, not so much why Trump won as why Joe Biden lost. I'll share mine with you real quickly. We have Biden had 12% GDP growth during his presidency, 16 million jobs created, lowest unemployment rate in 50 years, incomes up over $4,000. 20 million new businesses, $1 trillion in private manufacturing and clean energy investments. But what Biden didn't do, and I don't know if it's that he just thought people knew or thought that he still lived in 1970 when the media, told people what was going on. What he didn't do is go out in front of the White House, 3-4 days a week, like Donald Trump did 7 days a week, and brag about his accomplishments, and neither did Pramila Jayapal. The polling shows that 57% of Americans, 86 or 87% of Republicans believed we were in a recession when they went to vote. And whenever the country's in a recession, the incumbent party always loses. It's just predictable. So between that and Elon Musk dropping $270 million in just carpet bombing, swing states with lies about, and literally lies, about Trump's abortion position and whatnot, with his Ruth Bader Ginsburg pack, it seems that we were just massively out-messaged. I'm curious your thoughts on my thoughts and also, what you think happened.
Yeah, look, I think that there's a few threads here. I think that we didn't I think Biden certainly didn't use the power of his platform to the bully pulpit of the White House to brag enough. And I think that's probably true for everybody, though I felt like I was bragging all the time about everything that we were getting done. But you got to do it in the places that people listen. And look, the communications ecosystem has changed completely. And the right wing has created their own ecosystem to reach people. And I think that when you have a country where there is no presumption of truth, even in established media, and people can just go out, billionaires can go out and create their own ecosystems, it makes it extremely difficult. We've got to do the same on our side and find the places to communicate where people are actually listening. That's certainly one. Two, I think that we were engaged in a big proposition, Tom, and that was to change even democratic neoliberal economic thinking and modeling and policy to bottom-up, middle-out policy. But let's not forget that this, I think, is a relatively new proposition that Biden certainly stuck to, that we all pushed for. But there was 30 to 50 years before that of loss of gains, of economic gains for workers. Yep. When you have, the minimum wage stagnating over 50 years and all of the productivity in the economy being created by those workers, but going to the top 1%, people were in a really tough place. And you're not changing that overnight. But certainly we had big gains. We had big things that we did, but people were still angry and frustrated by their particular situation. And that leads me to the third one, which is I spent a lot of time trying to figure out why that list of accomplishments that you put out there did not make it to people's doors, not just being communicated, but why didn't people feel it? Why did they feel like they were worse off than they were 4 years ago. And what I realized, Tom, is that we were so effective at using the power of the federal government at the end of the Trump administration during COVID, when we passed those survival checks, and the beginning of the Biden administration, when we passed the American Rescue Plan, the child tax credit, we passed, housing assistance, we passed enormous assistance to state and local governments that distributed it in the form of subsidies for public transit, for utility bills. We had housing protections. We had rental assistance. We had eviction assistance to prevent evictions. And all of that, when Republicans took over again in the House, went away. It all went away. And I remember at the beginning of the Biden term, about 6 months in, there were economic reports that said that people had more in their savings account than they had ever had. They were able to think about going to a movie. They were able to think about doing, a vacation with their kids, or maybe buying clothes that they couldn't afford to buy for their kids, to have a new outfit for school, whatever it was. And that went away, but that was created by our investments, by our rejection of neoliberal economic trickle-down thinking, to saying, no, the government actually has to intervene and help, particularly in these big situations, big recessions. We did that, and then it stopped.
Yeah.
And so tangibly, people were worse off, but they weren't able to distinguish, and we didn't make the case, I don't think, that it was Republicans who stopped those things from continuing.
Exactly. I've also, I've also thought for a long time that if the Biden administration had simply referred to inflation as the Trump tax cut inflation or the Trump tariff inflation every time they used the word inflation for 4 years, that the election would have gone a different way. Kamala Harris would be our president right now.
Tom, I have to say one other thing. I think the election would have gone a different way if what we did in the Progressive Caucus when we passed Build Back Better with housing and childcare as two critical pieces,
is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Cinema and Manchin hadn't stopped it, we would have also won, because those are the biggest inflation.
We're hitting the break here. We'll be right back with Pramila Jayapal taking your calls. Representative Pramila Jayapal. And welcome back. Ready to take calls?
Yeah, let's do it.
Let's do it. Mike in Lomita, California, you are on the air with Representative Jayapal.
Well, thank you for taking our questions, Representative. Mine is this. Aside from riding an electric cart around a golf course, is there any duty of the presidency which cannot be executed from a New York prison cell if we equally treat everyone under law, as the Supreme Court building promises?
Well, Mike, I think you're asking the question that everybody is struggling with right now. How did we elect somebody who is convicted, 36 counts, incited an insurrection, and all these cases are now being dismissed because of the Supreme Court's decision on, essentially not being able to convict somebody who is in office and giving them blank leeway, totally, full leeway to do whatever they want, and to never be able to be held liable for that. And I think this is a massive problem. And I do think it means that even the minimal guardrails that we thought existed before don't exist now, because there's nothing to stop Donald Trump from saying, I'm doing this in my official capacity as president, and therefore I can never be held criminally liable. And I think that's one of the big things that we're going to have to struggle with and figure out how to address, because those norms just don't apply anymore.
David in Seattle, you're on the air with Representative Jayapal.
Hi there. I went to your thing over on First Hill. Did you know that Israel is not a democracy? It is a theocracy, because there's 2 Jews at the top of the Knesset that ratify all laws.
Is there a question here, David?
Yeah.
What's the question?
And that the cannibalism.
Apparently not. Do you want to comment on your thoughts on what's going on in the Middle East right now?
Well, look, this is a place where I had huge disagreements with the president. I thought we should have used our leverage, our funding leverage, our domestic laws, and our commitment to international humanitarian law to actually push for an immediate ceasefire shortly after October 7th happened, to get the hostages back and to actually think about a path forward. We didn't do that. We kept supplying military weapons. And you know what I think about our focus on military weapons, Tom. Maybe we'll talk about it. We're about to vote on the NDAA here. But the reality is we had leverage and we didn't use it. And now we are in a situation where we have literally seen tens of thousands of people that are reported, and probably more than that, that aren't reported, killed in Gaza, the entire infrastructure destroyed, the takeover of the West Bank by right-wing Israeli cabinet ministers, and no real chance at this point for what I think would be a lasting ceasefire. So I have a lot of disagreements about that. I totally supported the president on domestic economic policy, but on foreign policy, I think this has been a huge blow to the United States, to our reputation, and to our ability to really pull together an international coalition in any of these situations.
Completely agree. We'll be right back in 60 seconds. I've got to read a commercial over on the commercial side of the show. I'll be right back with you in 1 minute. Stay with us. Missed my opening rant today? It's usually published over at HartmannReport.com, where you can read it and share it with your friends for free. Check it out, HartmannReport.com. So a lot of people are wondering, why is it in America that we can't have nice things? Why don't we have, the same things every other democracy has? Every other democracy in the world has a national health care system of some form, and everybody is covered. We don't. We've got 27 million uninsured people and over 100 million underinsured people. Why is that? Why is it that every other country in the world offers college education very inexpensively, if not for free, and for here you go to debt? Why is it that we've got our public schools crumbling and other countries are doing well? Why is it that we've got Medicare being taken apart by this Medicare Advantage scam and nobody will do anything about it? Well, it turns out the reason why it boils down to one thing, one Supreme Court decision, Citizens United, legalizing the bribery of our politicians. There's a whole rant about this over at HartmannReport.com. I think you're going to find it very, very useful. Check it out. And welcome back. Representative Pramila Jayapal with us for the hour, taking your calls. And Nancy in Woodland, California, you are on the air with Representative Jayapal.
Hi, thank you both. I just, Thomas talked about, back in the day, Paul Ryan called all the Republicans together, and they agreed to stand together against anything the Democrats wanted to do. So can we count on the Democrats to do that sort of thing, to stand together? I'm not talking about getting in the gutter like the Republicans do, but we just need them to stand together. Right now, we've already had a couple of representatives saying that they're willing to work with Vivek Ramaswamy and Musk on their project.
This was the so-called caucus room conspiracy, where they got together the night that Barack Obama was being inaugurated, and Mitch McConnell and Paul Ryan and all the senior leadership of the Republican Party, and agreed that for the next 4 years they would block absolutely everything, even things they agreed with. Thank you, Nancy. Congresswoman?
Yeah, thank you, Nancy. I mean, I think that has been the work of the Progressive Caucus, frankly, is trying to get that kind of standing together and resistance to the agenda. I think that it is increasingly difficult to do that. I will say that last Trump administration, I think Speaker Pelosi actually did a pretty good job of whipping us all in that way and being very aligned with our thinking on this. I remember the Trump tax scam, 1.0. We're going to see 2.0 here coming up. But I remember that tax scam. Every single Democrat voted against that tax scam. And that was actually the point at which Trump's disapproval rating was at its highest, or his approval rating was at its lowest, whichever way you want to look at it, other than January 6th, the days following January 6th. And so we know when we stand together, it works. But when we're divided as Democrats, we confuse people about what Democrats actually stand for. And so we're going to have to work to really do that again this year. Obviously, we have new leadership with Hakeem Jeffries, and I hope that he and we will all do exactly what you're saying and stick together on opposing these things that are really against every single value that we have, and not try to run to the middle and be, Republican light instead of clearly Democratic and on the side of poor people and working people.
Tom in Media, Pennsylvania. Tom, we have just 1 minute to a hard break here. If you could ask a real quick question, please.
Yeah, I'm talking about Medicare for all. I'm skilled union. I have very, very good benefits that gives us not only access to the specialist,
what's your question, Tom?
Scheduling priority. Yes, are you willing to still support Medicare for all when skilled unions know this is going to hurt them?
Thank you.
We worked with Tom really quickly. We worked with unions, and we have the biggest number of unions ever on board because we've incorporated existing collective bargaining agreements. So I think Medicare for All can absolutely work for everyone, including those that are in unions that have bargained contracts.
That's good news.
Yeah.
Is there a growing consensus about Medicare for all? I mean, the assassination of this healthcare CEO has kind of raised this to a national issue again.
It really has. And look, there's always been a consensus about Medicare for all. We polled it right before the election in 7 swing states. It polled 10 points above the top of the ticket, Vice President Harris. And so the problem has been that because there's all this money in politics, which you know so well, when those money attacks come in, everybody's got to stick together and make the case. And people are afraid of those money attacks. And so they don't. And that's why we only have 50% of the caucus.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
We're hitting this break at the bottom of the hour. We'll be back within about 5 minutes with Representative Pramila Jayapal taking your calls for the hour. Stay tuned. We still need your help. Here we go. We're almost toward the end here. And I don't know if you've noticed, but Free Speech TV has been theming each day of the fundraising drive. And today's theme is LGBTQ and trans rights, rights for the entire queer community. And this is something that you see so little of, sadly, I think, in the mainstream media. And Free Speech TV not only has, programming around trans rights and generally, the LGBTQ community rights, but also you see those themes and those issues across many of the programs, including this one here on Free Speech TV. So if that's close to your heart, that's another additional reason to call now, 877-378-8669, or make a meaningful contribution to Free Speech TV, particularly a monthly one if you can. With a $100 gift, they will plant a tree for reforestation. With a $200 gift, there is the Free Speech TV Cozy Kit, which includes an exclusive Free Speech TV cookie, my book, The Hidden History of American American Dream, my newest book, and another gift that will be thrown into the package. With a $1,000 gift, you get all 10 of the Hidden History series books, all autographed by the author. And while you're doing that, while you're calling 877-378-8669 or going to freespeech.org and making your donation. And please do. Please do. This is a clip of Leslie Feinberg. You may not have heard of Leslie Feinberg. She died in 2014. She wrote a book called Stone Butch Blues in 1993 that made her somewhat famous. And then this absolutely pioneering piece in 1996 called Transgender Warriors, which, according to Wikipedia, quote, laid the groundwork for much of the terminology and awareness around gender studies and was instrumental in bringing these issues to a more mainstream audience. She described herself as an American butch, lesbian, transgendered activist, communist, and author. So here's a clip of Leslie Feinberg.
Lesbian, gay, bisexual, and trans people are no strangers to police and right-wing violence. When Matthew Shepard was murdered, we marched here in the streets 10,000 strong, and we made clear that we were no less outraged over the racist lynching of James Byrd Jr. in Jasper, Texas. Our march was viciously attacked. We were beaten and arrested by the same NYPD that lynched brothers Doris Munn and Amadou Diallo. An injury to one is an injury to all. That's why we fight to free Mumia. And Mumia stands with rainbow flags. Mumia from death row called for unity to stop anti-gay murders. It took courage for him to stand up against gay bashing. Well, that's his merit. That's why he's a leader who inspires so many communities. Now we must also fight to save Jalil Abdullah Al-Amin, formerly H.Rap Brown. Georgia is now seeking his execution. And why? In order to deal a blow to the rising progressive movement. We must not let ourselves be divided. And that's why we must unite as one fist in greater numbers in order to deal a death blow to racism, police brutality, right-wing violence, the death penalty, and slave labor in the prison industrial complex. And we who believe in Mumia's freedom shall not rest until it comes.
That was Leslie Feinberg, and one of the people who really defined an awful lot of, the modern contemporary ways that we're looking at issues around LGBTQ and trans rights. Again, Free Speech TV is one of the few places where these sometimes, in mainstream media, they might refer to them as marginal issues. If you remember, the queer community is not marginal at all. Dealing with issues of race, dealing with issues of gender, dealing with issues of fascism and politics and corporate power. These are the things you'll hear here on Free Speech TV that you will not hear on the corporate media, on the mainstream media, that you will not be reading in the New York Times and the Washington Post or your local newspaper. And that's why it's so important to be supporting Free Speech TV. It's one of the many reasons why it's so important. This television network and those of us on this television network so appreciate your support. Literally, you make this program possible. You make this network possible. You keep us on the air when you call 877-378-8669 or when you go to freespeech.org and make your contribution, whether it's a one-time contribution or whether it's a committing to a regular monthly, and whether that regular monthly contribution is $5 a month or $50 a month or $100, whatever works for you. Free Speech TV will make it happen. And that is the foundation of keeping this network going and keeping, the good message out there. So please call now. Please go to freespeech.org now and make your contribution. Free Speech TV needs your help. They need you now. Thank you. Did you know that every weekday we send out an email before the show giving you all the topics coming up so you can be fully informed and ready to interact with our program? Or that after the show we send out Sue's Stack, a list of every topic I've discussed along with clickable hot links to every source of information I've shared with you on the air? It's all completely free and available over at thom.tv, THOM.tv. Check it out. Welcome back. 34 minutes past the hour. Representative Pramila Jayapal is with us for the hour, taking your calls. And Bill in Clifton, New Jersey, you're on the air with Representative Jayapal.
Yeah, hi. Good afternoon. Can I, if you don't mind, can I just mention a memorialization for a woman who died 17 years ago, Natalie Sarkazian, who started the whole healthcare business. She was the 17-year-old girl who was denied a liver transplant by Cigna, even though she had a 65% chance of surviving it.
She was the woman that caused Wendell Potter to quit his job and become an activist.
Right.
So, Bill, what's your question for Representative Jayapal?
Oh, okay. Yeah, the question is that what are we going to do before it's too late to memorialize all the good work that's been done by Joe Biden? So this time next year or whenever it is, something to compare it to. I don't understand why the Fed or no one has a system like A, B, and C in terms of making a metric of the economy that people can point to. People don't understand the economy. It's like
right. We got it, Bill. Thank you for the question.
Yeah, I mean, look, by the way, we work a lot with Wendell Potter on stopping the privatization of Medicare. He's been a really good force because he came from that industry. So, I think in terms of memorializing, one of the challenges is some of the things that we did are not going to happen until next year. If you think about prescription drug pricing, we're expanding the list of prescription drugs that are being negotiated by Medicare this year, or they'll go into effect next year, and it'll be under the Trump administration. And I think one of the things we have to do is figure out how to make it clear and to be pushing every time that happens to say, this is what we did in the Biden administration, but also to send letters out now. We've asked the president to send letters out now saying, next year you will see your drug prices come down, and it is because of Democrats. Next year you will see this go into effect, and it is because of Democrats. So that he uses the few months that he's got now to make it clear to people that when they see these things next year, and when we remind them of it, that they will know it was from us. We're also trying to make sure they publish all the data now, so that a lot of the studies, research from the different agencies, the data gets published out there, so that we have that and it can't be manipulated. So there are a number of things like that as well that we're doing.
Hills in Goleta, California. You are listening on KFBK. You are on the air with Representative Jayapal.
Good morning, Representative. My question is, do you know if the assassination of the healthcare CEO was at all related to Medicare Advantage programs?
It's not clear yet. I know that there is some reporting about his medical problems, but it's not clear exactly where those came from. But I think that information will emerge. And it's certainly, as Thom said earlier, a moment for us to really talk about the desperation that people feel, making it clear that assassinating somebody is never the answer. We have to fully condemn that. And we have to make it clear that the desperation for people to be able to get basic health care is so severe across the country. And it's not just one segment of the population. It's everybody is having trouble paying these premiums, paying these copays and deductibles, unless you happen to be extremely, extremely wealthy, or perhaps you have a company that has a moral conscience and is providing you with good health care. But this is a moment for us to just hammer in how we could get to a different place where we have universal health care just like every other country in the world.
There you go. Carlos in Carson, California. You're on the air with Pramila Jayapal, with Representative Jayapal.
Yes, question. I read in the book Red Army that George Soros finances the Congressional Progressive Caucus, the Congressional Black Caucus, the Congressional Latino Caucus. And that's why we have all these liberal issues taking a hold of our society, like rampant immigration, rampant transgenderism, the exaltation of women's issues being shoved down.
Who did you say is funding the caucus, Carlos?
George Soros.
George Soros. Okay, Congresswoman.
Well, thanks, Carlos. Look, I think that the reality here is the economic condition that makes people feel like they've got to just focus on themselves and they want to, push away other people. But let's be clear about who is responsible for that. It is not a transgender person that is taking away your job. It is not an immigrant who is driving down your wages. This is being done by the biggest corporations, the biggest billionaires, the people in this country who want the country to only work for a tiny group of people and don't and see everybody else as expendable. And so our work is to make sure that we are getting this government to actually pay for many of the things that other countries invest in, because it is a good investment. Right. If we invest in childcare, if we invest in healthcare, that is a good investment. It costs us less and it gets us better results. And it allows everybody to continue to feel like they don't have to just protect what's mine.
And very quickly, is the Congressional Progressive Caucus and the Congressional Black Caucus funded by George Soros?
No. I mean, the Progressive, no, sorry, I should have answered that right away. It was so ridiculous.
It really is, yeah. Thank you. Michael in Gainesville, Florida. Hey, Michael, you're on the air with Representative Jayapal.
Yes, hello, thank you. Quick question, is the scientific racism that's ubiquitous in all of the think tanks in Washington also ubiquitous in all of the leadership, and especially the Republican leadership? And please know that there is a quick response. You can't get too technical. That makes them fall asleep. You can't just say, oh, you're being biased. That's not a response. The correct response is, because it's taught here in universities in Florida, by the way, the correct response and argument is that the same IQ tests that are used to show the supposed difference in the bell curve, those same IQ tests also show that 2/3 of the countries in the world have a moronic IQ of 70. And I think Spain and France would disagree. And
I'm sorry. Do you want to speak to so-called scientific racism?
Well, look, there's institutionalized racism that is built into our systems, and a lot of the ways in which, for example, tests in universities are administered are affected by some of those things. Certainly a lot of our technologies are. I think that we have to look at the scientific data of different disaggregated communities when we're trying to make any assessment of how a policy is going to do or how a condition affects different people. And healthcare is a perfect example. If you look at the healthcare system, you certainly see from the research, it's very clear that folks of color have less access to healthcare, less ability to pay for that health care, and as a result, worse outcomes in addition to all the other factors, health factors that may be present. So I'm not sure exactly what the questioner was getting at, Tom, but that's the best I can do with what I heard.
Yeah, that's a good one. Larry in Los Angeles, you're on the air with Representative Jayapal.
Can you hear me, ma'am?
We can hear you fine, Larry. What's your question?
My question is, there's suggestions out in the country that VP Harris should resign and get appointed as Attorney General so that she can arrest and incarcerate Mr. Trump. And following up on that, can you tell me if he decides to implement martial law, how that will come about? Thank you.
No, Vice President Harris is not going to be appointed as Attorney General. The president's term has ended now. And so I'm not sure, are you talking about Donald Trump implementing martial law?
Yes, I'm sure he was.
Is that what he was talking about?
Yeah. How will we respond?
how will we respond to that?
Correct.
I think we're going to have to push back in every way that we can. I certainly hope that that's not the case, but we just saw in South Korea when the president tried to do that, there was an immediate response from the country, and now he has, for all intents and purposes, lost his power. So I think that is the only way to respond to something like that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's coming up on 45 minutes. It's 44 and a half minutes past the hour. We'll be back with more of your calls for Representative Pramila Jayapal, the outgoing chair of the Congressional Progressive Caucus, representing the 7th District of Washington State. We'll be back with more of your calls for Representative Jayapal in just a moment. You can find her website at Jayapal, jayapal.house.gov, and she's at Rep Jayapal is my recollection here. Hang on just a minute. I'll get it right.
We're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit ThomHartmann.com for audio and video archives.
I'm sorry. Over on Blue Sky, she's Pramila Jayapal. Check it out. Representative Jayapal will be right back with us. And welcome back. Patrick in Chicago, you're on the air with Representative Jayapal.
Hi, Representative Jayapal. Hi, Tom. Thanks you both for doing this. My question is about the 14th Amendment. As I understand it, the Supreme Court decided that Trump was going to be allowed on the ballot. And I think, as I understand it, they also decided that the presidency wasn't an office, nor was it an officer of the United States. And so my question is, doesn't that set up a constitutional crisis because he can't control the military? It says that in the amendment specifically, he cannot hold any office, civil or military. So if the president can't control the military, who does? That's a constitutional crisis. In my opinion, Biden needs to figure that out before handing the keys over to Trump, and I think that should be done now. Thank you.
Okay, and if I could just add to that, Representative Jayapal, my understanding is the Supreme Court decision was that he could run for office, but they didn't say that he could hold office. And the amendment says that 2/3 of Congress has to vote to allow him to hold office. Obviously, none of this is going to get enforced, but I'm curious your thoughts on it.
I mean, I think the Supreme Court took a very easy way out on that decision. They, I think they punted on the decision because they are appointees, or the majority are appointees of Donald Trump, and many of them are, I think, corrupted. A couple of them are corrupted by, again, the influence of big money that helped get Donald Trump elected. And so I think that this is part of the problem. So much of our Constitution, we saw this in the first Trump term. There's a lot that's based on norms. And when these cases go up to the Supreme Court, there is also, I think, now a reluctance to apply the law and look at constitutional law as it needs to be looked at. And I think that's one of the reasons that we've been advocating for reforms of the Supreme Court. But obviously, Tom, without a trifecta, we can't do that. And so I do think that this is going to be a very dark time, and let's see what happens. But we're going to have to be ready to use every tool in the toolbox. And at the end of the day, it's probably going to come down to figuring out how to reach people so they understand what is at stake, and so that they get mobilized to fight back.
1 minute to a break. Jonathan in Portland, you got a quick one for Representative Jayapal?
Yeah, I think Taiwan has the greatest democracy in the world, and I wanted to know if you know anything about it, if you know anything about Audrey Tang, their technology minister, and their crowdsourced democracy and their use of polis, and because that's what got them out of a military dictatorship and helped them survive the pandemic.
Yeah, Taiwan's a really interesting model. I've been there actually for some personal reasons a couple of times, but I'm looking forward to going on an official trip. And I do think that it's a model that we should look at and study more. I don't know enough about all the pieces that you're talking about there, Jonathan, but I'm looking forward to being able to go over there and see what might be applicable here.
And people who analyze healthcare systems argue that they've got the best single-payer healthcare system in the world, too.
We had one of them from the government on a panel that we were doing of healthcare experts from around the world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's really quite remarkable, and their democracy is so vibrant. And
yeah.
go ahead.
The difference, of course, is that it's very small, right? So much easier.
And I don't think they allow money into politics, but I may be wrong on that. So anyway,
you're right about that.
There you go. 48 minutes past the hour. Representative Pramila Jayapal is with us for the hour, taking your calls. We'll be back in 60 seconds with more of your calls for her. Stay tuned. Hey, thanks so much for sharing our program and for reaching out to our stations and sponsors and letting them know that you're listening. It really means a lot to us. Back in 1968, when Lyndon Johnson was president, Earl Warren resigned from the Supreme Court. He was a liberal, even though he had been appointed by Eisenhower. Johnson wasn't able to replace him, in part because of Republican opposition in the Senate. And so when Nixon came in, he had this opening, but he wanted to have two openings. He wanted to get rid of Abe Fortas, who was the most liberal member of the court. So he had his Attorney General, John Mitchell, start an investigation into Abe Fortas's wife. Now, there was nothing there. There was no smoke at all. She had done absolutely nothing wrong, and history has proven that. But they were going to drag her before a grand jury and possibly before Congress and just, drag her through the mud. And this caused Abe Fortas to resign, and that gave Nixon two openings, and that's how the court turned to the right. I'm suggesting that Democrats should do the same thing with Justice Thomas. I've got an op-ed about it at Hartmann Report. You can read it over there. Check it out. Welcome back. Representative Pramila Jayapal is with us for the hour, taking your calls. And Tanya in Cleveland, Ohio. Tanya, you're on the air with Representative Jayapal.
Hi, Tom, and thank you for taking my call. And you know what? We keep wanting to blame. I'm sorry. I want to acknowledge you, Miss Congressperson. But we keep blaming this on Trump. When did we start voting for dumb people? Marjorie Taylor Greene, Matt Gaetz. I'm telling you that. What do we do? How do I help to put better people into our Congress and into our Senate? We got to go, Mert. We got to do something different.
Yeah.
And how do we help?
Great question, Tanya. Thank you.
Yeah, no, it's a great question, Tanya. And here's the thing. I think we have put incredible people. I just look at the strength of the Progressive Caucus over the years. We've grown from just a couple members, back in 1991 when it was started to now, almost 100 members. And I think that we have people across this country, even in frontline districts who aren't members of the Progressive Caucus, who are extremely strong. But it requires people to engage. And so if you ask how you can help, it is really by getting engaged in your local community, making sure that people understand what Democrats have done, what we stand for, what the policies are that we need to push back on, making sure you elect strong Democrats if you're in a Democratic district, making sure you elect people who are going to stand up against big money and, not take corporate PAC contributions. When I ran, Tom, for the first time in 2016, I was one of only 4 sitting House members to not take corporate PAC money.
Wow.
And, it's kind of remarkable. Now we have about 60, but I wish it was every single person. And we're pushing, as you know, with the DNC to not have the DNC take corporate PAC money. So I think that this is very important, Tanya, for you to get engaged right in your local area, to start organizing, to find good candidates, to help them win, to do the work, to make sure you've got that grassroots support for those good candidates who are going to stand up and really fight for working people and poor people and our democracy overall.
Diane in Fayetteville, Arkansas. You're on the air with Representative Jayapal.
And thank you for your service, Representative. I liked what you said about getting letters out to people, acknowledging and reminding people about the good that Joe Biden's administration has done. But I did want to throw one thing out for you to think about. I have never voted for a Republican in my life, and I was just 8 texts a day from Republicans with all kinds of stuff, and I never could get through to anybody to ask them how I got on that list. And several of my friends here in Arkansas, big Democrats and independents, they also got them. And it was touting, they were lies. Everything in these texts were lies. And I thought, how many independents and Democrats did those letters go out to? Well, text, you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Anyway, how did they get that list, I guess, number one, and can you all do it too?
Yeah, no, Diane, this is something that I just released a statement of principles that the next DNC chair should push for with a couple of other members. And one of the things is to undertake really a quick but thorough communications assessment, because we've heard this not only in terms of text, but in terms of entire newspapers that are being delivered to the door in certain places as if they are regular newspapers that are only filled with right-wing propaganda. There are all these different communications channels that Republicans have created. I don't know how they got your number, but I sure would like to know. Where did those lists come from? Did they come from, somehow when you signed up for a social media account and that got shared against your will? Where did those numbers come from? And so I think that is one of the things we really have to investigate, because they certainly figured out how to communicate in places where people would see and hear and listen.
Absolutely.
And that is a big problem. We're still using old ways of communicating.
Greg, we have a minute and a half to the end of the hour, by the way. Greg in Birch Bay, Washington. Real quick question, please, Greg.
Yeah, hi. With all the effort that's been put into finding the shooter of that CEO of the United Healthcare, I'm wondering, because it's like I've heard it's a 30% ratio of people they just flat out deny, how come we don't investigate the people that got denied and died because of the healthcare coverage's policy of just deny, and make it hard for people that are sick and ill to go and fight the insurance company? How come we're not looking up and finding out about
what? Representative Jayapal?
Yeah, no, Greg, you're right. This is what we do actually in hearings. We bring people forward who have had exactly that experience. There are studies that have been done that show exactly how many people are being denied. We've published reports on this over and over again. The problem is this enormous amount of money that has flooded the political sphere, where people are afraid to speak out against these private insurance companies and afraid to advocate for something that the people want. And this is not only this, by the way, this is true of minimum wage as well, where corporations are putting so much money in to defeat any efforts to raise the federal minimum wage. It's true on every major policy where I think Congress, including sometimes Democrats, are out of step with the people and what we actually should do and make sense to do, both monetarily and morally.
There you go. Representative Jayapal, it's so great having you with us. I wish you the happiest of holidays, and thank you so much again for dropping by.
Thank you, Tom. It was always great to be with you.
Thank you. The door is always open. Coming up in the next hour, a call to arms, Trump's pardon pledge, and the rise of militant extremism. Stay with us.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann.
In addition to bringing you the Thom Hartmann Program here on Free Speech TV and Video Media Online, we also have a whole set of ways you can interact with us and tools you can use to spread the word about the importance of democracy and the threats to it in our republic. First, there's your daily homework. Sue Nethercutt puts together a daily email newsletter that has a link to every story I discuss on the air, so you can find my sources and you can share them with your friends. It's free and you can sign up at thomhartmann.com. Second, I publish my daily take every day over at the hartmannreport.com website. That's also free if you want the daily 5 days a week rant in your inbox. No ads either. Third, we have the podcasts. There's the free 1-hour version of our daily show that's advertising supported. You can find that wherever you get your podcasts normally. And then there's also the podcast of the entire 3-hour show with no advertisements, and that's available by subscription over at thomhartmann.com. So check them all out at thomhartmann.com and hartmannreport.com. still need your help. Here we go. We're almost toward the end here. And I don't know if you've noticed, but Free Speech TV has been theming each day of the fundraising drive. And today's theme is LGBTQ and trans rights, rights for the entire queer community. And this is something that you see so little of, sadly, I think, in the mainstream media. And Free Speech TV not only has, programming around trans rights and generally, the LGBTQ community rights, but also you see those themes and those issues across many of the programs, including this one here on Free Speech TV. So if that's close to your heart, that's another additional reason to call now, 877-378-8669, or make a meaningful contribution to Free Speech TV, particularly a monthly one if you can. With a $100 gift, they will plant a tree for reforestation. With a $200 gift, there is the Free Speech TV Cozy Kit, which includes an exclusive Free Speech TV cookie, my book, The Hidden History of American Democracy, American Dream, my newest book, and another gift that will be thrown into the package. With a $1,000 gift, you get all 10 of the Hidden History series books, all autographed by the author. And while you're doing that, while you're calling 877-378-8669 or going to freespeech.org and making your donation, and please do. Please do. This is a clip of Leslie Feinberg. You may not have heard of Leslie Feinberg. She died in 2014. She wrote a book called Stone Butch Blues in 1993 that made her somewhat famous. And then this absolutely pioneering piece in 1996 called Transgender Warriors, which, according to Wikipedia, quote, laid the groundwork for much of the terminology and awareness around gender studies and was instrumental in bringing these issues to a more mainstream audience. She described herself as an American butch, lesbian, transgendered activist, communist, and author. So here's a clip of Leslie Feinberg.
Lesbian, gay, bisexual, and trans people are no strangers to police and right-wing violence. When Matthew Shepard was murdered, we marched here in the streets 10,000 strong, and we made clear that we were no less outraged over the racist lynching of James Byrd Jr. in Jasper, Texas. Our march was viciously attacked. We were beaten and arrested by the same NYPD that lynched brothers Doris Munn and Amadou Diallo. An injury to one is an injury to all. That's why we fight to free Mumia. And Mumia stands with rainbow flags. Mumia from death row called for unity to stop anti-gay murders. It took courage for him to stand up against gay bashing. Now that's his merit. That's why he's a leader who inspires so many communities. Now we must also fight to save Jalil Abdullah Al-Amin, formerly H.Rap Brown. Georgia is now seeking his execution. And why? In order to deal a blow to the rising progressive movement. We must not let ourselves be divided. And that's why we must unite as one fist in greater numbers in order to deal a death blow to racism, police brutality, right-wing violence, the death penalty, and slave labor in the prison industrial complex. And we who believe in Mumia's freedom shall not rest until it comes.
That was Leslie Feinberg, and one of the people who really defined an awful lot of, the modern contemporary ways that we're looking at issues around LGBTQ and trans rights. Again, Free Speech TV is one of the few places where these sometimes, in mainstream media, they might refer to them as marginal issues. If you remember, the queer community is not marginal at all. Dealing with issues of race, dealing with issues of gender, dealing with issues of fascism and politics and corporate power. These are the things you'll hear here on Free Speech TV that you will not hear on the corporate media, on the mainstream media, that you will not be reading in the New York Times and the Washington Post or your local newspaper. And that's why it's so important to be supporting Free Speech TV. It's one of the many reasons why it's so important. This television network and those of us on this television network so appreciate your support. Literally, you make this program possible. You make this network possible. You keep us on the air when you call 877-378-8669 or when you go to freespeech.org and make your contribution, whether it's a one-time contribution or whether it's a committing to a regular monthly, and whether that regular monthly contribution is $5 a month or $50 a month or $100, whatever works for you. Free Speech TV will make it happen. And that is the foundation of keeping this network going and keeping, the good message out there. So please call now. Please go to freespeech.org now and make your contribution. Free Speech TV needs your help. They need you now. Thank you.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Welcome to the second hour of our program. Is Donald Trump, this is an interesting, just kind of an aside, right? The stories have been all over the media that billionaire socialite Bettina Anderson, or the daughter of billionaires, has been getting it on with with Don Jr. And Kimberly Guilfoyle is supposed to be his girlfriend. In fact, supposed to be his fiancée, I believe. Apparently that engagement has been broken off. But anyhow, so what do you do with Kimberly Guilfoyle? How do you keep her happy and also get her out of the way? Well, Trump just appointed her to be the the U.S. ambassador to Greece. So she gets to visit the Greek islands for the next 4 years and stay out of Don Jr.'s hair. Is that the deal? I don't know. It's just very strange. All right, my op-ed today over at HartmannReport.com, our daily take for the day for that and for this program, is titled "A Call to Arms: Trump's Pardon Pledge and the Rise of Militant Extremism." And this past weekend in the Trump's interview with Kristen Welker, of NBC News, Meet the Press, Donald Trump reaffirmed his intention to pardon the people who attacked the Capitol and killed 5 civilians and 3 police officers. And in fact, he said, "I'm going to be acting very quickly. First day. They've been in there for years. They're in a filthy, disgusting place that shouldn't even be allowed to be open." Now, most media commentators and observers, appear to be of the opinion that this is just Trump's way of thanking people, who were willing to employ violence to try to keep him in the White House. Maybe that would be bad enough. But experts at the Critical Internet Studies Institute are worried that there's actually a far more sinister explanation. That Trump isn't pardoning these people because it was a campaign promise. He's not pardoning them because, he appreciates what they did. He's pardoning them as a way of saying to those who didn't show up on January 6th, but are inclined to commit violence on behalf of Trump, and in particular people in these all-white right-wing militias, or mostly all-white right-wing militias, that if you commit violence on my behalf, essentially Trump is saying, if you go out and kill liberals or shoot black people or, beat up queer people or whatever, if you do that, I'll have your back. That's his message. And I think this is right. I think they're absolutely right. And there's a long history of this, by the way. I mean, obviously, you can go back to Germany in the 1930s with the brown shirts, or Italy in the 1920s, late 1920s with the black shirts, Mussolini's black shirts. These were both basically, volunteer militias that went out and terrorized liberals and communists and the gay community. I mean, it was just no doubt about it. But it's going on in a contemporary way too. Over in Russia, Vladimir Putin has got this gang called the Night Wolves Motorcycle Club. Sometimes they're referred to as Putin's Angels. And they're run by a guy who calls himself the Surgeon. They helped him invade Crimea and Ukraine, but most significantly, most of what they do in Russia is they go around and they beat up anti-Putin people, and as well as anybody in the queer community. And so that's happening in Russia. Similarly, you had something very similar to this going on in Hungary, where Hungarian white mobs are going after the Roma people, and Viktor Orban refuses to condemn that and just kind of winks and looks the other way. And we're seeing from people who are the counterterrorism experts here in the United States pointing out that the right-wing armed right-wing militia groups in the United States are recruiting aggressively. Which plays into this idea that when Trump says he's pardoning the January 6th killers, murderers, that what he's actually doing is recruiting. He's helping the recruiting effort for these groups. Reuters, for example, just wrote a piece, the Proud Boys are back 4 years after the failed effort to overturn Trump's 2020 electoral defeat. The violent, all-male extremist group that led the storming of Congress on January 6th is rebuilding and regaining strength as Trump campaigns. This was published just before the election. According to interviews with 8 Proud Boys, 2 U.S. law enforcement officials, and 4 experts who tracked the group's online activity. Then there's Scott Seddon, who was the founder of the 3 Percenters. And he says, this is just not going to go away. We need to become effing strong, effing lions, he says. Start reaching out to individuals in your state who are trustworthy, that have like-minded vision of local strong communities to hold down the fort just in case of war or for when the crap hits the fan. I cleaned that all up a little bit. Trump's so-called border czar, Thom Hartmann, told Fox News, quote, there are thousands of retired agents, border patrols, retired military personnel who want to come and volunteer to help this president secure the border and do deportation operations. So we're looking at, when the guy who is going to be in charge of deporting people just literally comes right out and says, we're going to be recruiting, irregular forces. We're not going to be doing this entirely with government employees. We're going to invite in the vigilantes, essentially. I think we need to take this very, very seriously. Tim Foley, the head of the Arizona Border Recon, which is a white civilian patrol group down there, he says, we're in talks with a few different people. We have a better lay of the land than the federal agents do. I think it's worth remembering that pretty much the only people that Trump is talking about pardoning are white men, who participated not just in the murder of 3 police officers and 5 civilians, but also tried to hang the Vice President of the United States and tried to murder the Speaker of the House of Representatives. And they were quite explicit about it. And had they caught either one of those people, they would probably be dead right now. And this, by the way, is exactly what Trump's pick for the Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth, has written about. Right? In his 2020 book, American Crusade, Pete Hegseth writes, the military and police, both bastions of freedom-loving patriots, will be forced to make a choice. It will not be good. Yes, there will be some form of civil war. Civil war? And then more recently, in his 2024 book, The War on Warriors, Hegseth writes, America today is in a cold civil war. The country is under siege by Confederacy radicals. Yeah, I wouldn't say the lefties are the Confederacy, but anyway, you get this. Donald Trump himself has said that his deportation plans will be, and I quote, bloody. Now, our timid national media don't want to talk about this. Oh, there might be bloodshed. Oh, there might be violence. Oh, these militias might show. I don't know if they're unwilling to talk about it because they're afraid of encouraging it, or if they're unwilling to talk about it because they're just afraid. But, I'm willing to talk about this and say I think this is something that the Biden administration needs to be telling Americans what they are doing about this, how they are preparing us for the possibility of an assault against Americans by Americans. What are you doing, Joe Biden, to prevent a civil war? And if you feel like everything's under control and you should be, otherwise reassuring us, explain to us why. Joyce Vance was on Ari Melber's MSNBC show day before yesterday, and she said, and I quote, when you listen to these comments and watch these videos, what you're forced to consider is that the message that Donald Trump is sending is not just to the January 6th defendants. It's to the people he hopes will support him in this next term. And the message is, support me at all costs, use violence, commit crimes, and I will take care of you. She finished that up by saying, I find that to be deeply frightening. I would like to know. I think many Americans, I think at least half of Americans, probably 2/3 of Americans would like to know. How should we prepare? What is the government doing to prepare for the kind of violence that Donald Trump and Pete Hegseth and many of these so-called militia groups are promising, essentially? What's going on?
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
15 minutes past the hour. I'll be right back with you. Stay tuned. And welcome back. Picking up your calls here, Roger in Seattle. Hey, Roger, what's on your mind today?
Well, I heard a commentary this morning about, this shooter, the CEO, indicates we're willing to resort to violence. Well, look to our incoming president. Maybe he's the cause. Well, okay, yeah, it's true that Republicans and other people have been using violent rhetoric before that, but Trump has taken it to a new point because he's listening to McCarthy's former lawyer and doing that type of extreme journalism to get any type of publicity. So if he wants to say, I can shoot somebody on Fifth Avenue and not get sent to jail, well, how about that? So for us to say, the poor CEO, he's the result of society. Well, look to your president, society. I think we're giving a pass to not following the Greeks. They set up the Olympics in order so that Sparta and Athens wouldn't beat each other to death.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, no, excellent point, Roger. And I think that what Trump is essentially saying to his followers is you can shoot somebody on Fifth Avenue and I'll make sure that you don't go to jail, that nothing will happen to you. And that concerns me. Roger, thank you. That was well said. Suzanne in Los Angeles. Hey, Suzanne, what's up?
Hi, Tom. I had a question about the pardon. I know the pardon power is great, but there should be something added to there about nonviolent crimes, I think. There should be something in there that says you can't pardon somebody for murder.
Well, murderers have been pardoned, historically.
They have?
Yeah, several murderers were pardoned by Donald Trump on his way out. If you gave him enough money, you could get a pardon at the end of his last administration. And including several war criminals. In fact, Pete Hegseth argued for two guys who were committing slaughter of civilians, just killing civilians in Iraq. And they were arrested by the military. They were prosecuted in military courts. They were sentenced to prison, and they were in prison. And Trump pardoned them. And Pete Hegseth was pushing for that because they were warriors, don't you know? They were only killing Iraqis. That doesn't matter. So yeah, but the problem is it's written in the. This is not a law. It is in the Constitution. So if you want to change it, you have to alter the Constitution, and that's not anything that's going to be easy to do. It takes 2/3 of the House and Senate, 3/4 of the states.
Is there any difference between state and federal
pardons?
Levels of crime?
Every state, or I believe every state, there may be some states whose constitutions do not include a pardon power for the state chief executive, but I doubt it. Every state has, their governors can commit pardons, but I don't know, how narrowly circumscribed they are, and I'm guessing that there's a whole, spectrum of how tight or loose the various pardon rules are in the various states.
Well, what I meant was, can the president pardon somebody who's been convicted in individual state courts?
No, he cannot. No, this is only for federal crimes. The president can only pardon federal crimes, right? That's why he can't pardon himself. He was convicted in state court in New York. And now you've got, Alvin Bragg and Letitia James both saying, we're not going away. So I think this is going to get interesting. Susan, thank you very much for the call. Suzanne, 20 minutes past the hour. I'll be right back. From all of us here on the Thom Hartmann Program to all of you, happy holidays, and thanks for listening.
On the steps of the Capitol, blood was spilled, a reckoning of rage, a nation's will. The promises whispered on a treacherous wind, I'll free them all, said the man who sinned. Day one he vows the cages will fall, heroes he claims in their violent thrall. While justice weeps for the lives they've torn, he raises the banner of a new storm born.
Delay, Deny, Defend, the book cited on the CEO killer's shell casings, has surged to number 3 on the Amazon list. People are referring to Luigi Mangione as the adjuster, as in claims adjuster, which is, the industry term. This book came out a decade ago, and it's titled Delay, Deny, Defend, Why Insurance Companies Don't Pay Claims and What You Can Do About It. It was published in 2010, so actually 14 years ago. And it's now number 3 on the Amazon bestseller list, which is pretty amazing. I suspect that Luigi Mangione has actually triggered a national conversation that we very much need to have. Now that he's been caught, up until the time he was caught, everybody was like, oh, who is it, and what did they do, and why did they do it, and what do we know, and nobody knew anything, and, quack, quack, quack. Now that he's been caught, and as more stories will come out about what might have caused his rage, and specifically caused it to be directed against United Healthcare, we are hearing more and more stories from people who've been, in some cases, not just screwed by health insurance companies or harmed by health insurance companies, but had friends, relatives, children, parents, basically killed by health insurance company refusals to provide or pay for care, or negligence, around care. And our healthcare system itself is just become an absolute mess. We have the most expensive healthcare in the world, and we have some of the worst outcomes in the world, in the developed world. Where's this going to go? I don't know, but I really think that we are close to one of those moments where a discussion about single-payer healthcare can be had without the insane rhetoric coming from the right having the kind of stickiness that it has had in the past. Oh, it's socialism. Oh, you don't want to be like Canada. Oh, my God, you're going to have to wait 6 months. Yeah. I try to make an appointment with a specialist in the United States right now in less than 6 months. Good luck with that, right? So, meanwhile, over at Newsmax, this is crazy. Greg Kelly, who is the 9 p.m. Eastern Time, 6 p.m. Pacific Time Newsmax anchor, actually went off against Pete Hegseth. This was last week, and said that because of his baggage, he was, quote, blackmailable, which is true. You don't want a defense secretary who's spending most of his time denying, lying about, or trying to cover up his own past. And after that happened, apparently the Trump team got in touch with Chris Ruddy, who is the CEO of Newsmax, and just raised holy hell. There are reports that Trump himself called Chris Ruddy. Chris Ruddy or Newsmax have come out and said that no, he was not contacted directly by the president. It really doesn't matter. Somebody from Mar-a-Lago did reach out. And suddenly, Newsmax not only changed their tune, but put some punch behind it. The word made it to Newsmax that Trump was furious. On Friday, this is last Friday, Newsmax Chief Operating Officer Elliot Jacobson convened the staff in their New York headquarters to issue guidance in what one source described as an aggressive and panicked tone. Jacobson said that on-air coverage of Hegseth needed to focus on the positive. And he said if guests bring up Hegseth, hosts should explain to viewers that the claims against him are allegations and then pivot. The executive warned, and this is apparently a verbatim quote, any issues following this will result in termination. And the initial segment had created kind of a stir at Newsmax's headquarters. People had posted a side-by-side picture of Greg Kelly's book and Pete Hegseth's book with the question, who should be Trump's Secretary of Defense, who's more fit? Putting quotation marks around fit. With the implication being that Hegseth is not fit to be Secretary of Defense. Well, those are gone. And now, and keep in mind, Hegseth, there's a woman who says that he raped her. He reportedly told his first wife he had 5 affairs while they were married. He had an affair with his second wife on his first wife. He had an affair with his third wife on his second wife. Very much like Donald Trump, actually. And although Donald Trump doesn't appear to have a drinking problem, he has an eating problem. But then on Tuesday night, a former Newsmax producer blasted this directive and told Mediaite.com, quote, this shouldn't be news to anybody who's followed Newsmax's history of using the airwaves to stuff Ruddy's pocket. The source said they feel sorry for the investors who bought shares in the network's parent company. The company says it's so far raised $100 million and plans to go public as soon as they can, as soon as early 2025. But there's quite a buzz around this over at Newsmax. People saying that Newsmax has basically become an infomercial for Donald Trump. Whatever Trump wants them to say, they say. And, of course, Newsmax wants to displace Fox as the big dog in the conservative television world. That's not going to happen, of course. Fox's carriage is ubiquitous, and Fox has, a 30-year head start on them. But I don't know. It's the whole state of right-wing media right now is just bizarre. It's just absolutely bizarre. So what's on your mind today? I'll pick up your calls on the other side of this break. It's the Thom Hartmann Program, your media support group for we, the people of the United States of America and the world. Stay tuned.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
Exposing the con in conservative. I'll be right back with your calls. We still need your help. Here we go. We're almost toward the end here. And I don't know if you've noticed, but Free Speech TV has been theming each day of the fundraising drive. And today's theme is LGBTQ and trans rights, rights for the entire queer community. And this is something that you see so little of, sadly, I think, in the mainstream media. And Free Speech TV not only has, programming around trans rights and generally, the LGBTQ community rights, but also you see those themes and those issues across many of the programs, including this one here on Free Speech TV. So if that's close to your heart, that's another additional reason to call now, 877-378-8669, or make a meaningful contribution to Free Speech TV, particularly particularly a monthly one if you can. With a $100 gift, they will plant a tree for reforestation. With a $200 gift, there is the Free Speech TV Cozy Kit, which includes an exclusive Free Speech TV cookie, my book, The Hidden History of American Democracy, American Dream, my newest book, and another gift that will be thrown into the package. With a $1,000 gift, you get all 10 of the Hidden History series books, all autographed by the author. And while you're doing that, while you're calling 877-378-8669 or going to freespeech.org and making your donation, and please do. Please do. This is a clip of Leslie Feinberg. You may not have heard of Leslie Feinberg. She died in 2014. She wrote a book called Stone Butch Blues in 1993 that made her somewhat famous. And then this absolutely pioneering piece in 1996 called Transgender Warriors, which, according to Wikipedia, quote, laid the groundwork for much of the terminology and awareness around gender studies and was instrumental in bringing these issues to a more mainstream audience. She described herself as an American butch, lesbian, transgendered activist, communist, and author. So here's a clip of Leslie Feinberg.
Lesbian, gay, bisexual, and trans people are no strangers to police and right-wing violence. When Matthew Shepard was murdered, we marched here in the streets 10,000 strong, and we made clear that we were no less outraged over the racist lynching of James Byrd Jr. in Jasper, Texas. Our march was viciously attacked. We were beaten and arrested by the same NYPD that lynched brothers Doris Munn and Amadou Diallo. An injury to one is an injury to all. That's why we fight to free Mumia. And Mumia stands with rainbow flags. Mumia from death row called for unity to stop anti-gay murders. It took courage for him to stand up against gay bashing. Well, that's his merit. That's why he's a leader who inspires so many communities. Now we must also fight to save Jalil Abdullah Al-Amin, formerly H.Rap Brown. Georgia is now seeking his execution. And why? In order to deal a blow to the rising progressive movement. We must not let ourselves be divided. And that's why we must unite as one fist in greater numbers in order to deal a death blow to racism, police brutality, right-wing violence, the death penalty, and slave labor in the prison industrial complex. And we who believe in Mumia's freedom shall not rest until it comes.
That was Leslie Feinberg, and one of the people who really defined an awful lot of, the modern contemporary ways that we're looking at issues around LGBTQ and trans rights. Again, Free Speech TV is one of the few places where these sometimes, in mainstream media, they might refer to them as marginal issues. If you're a member of the queer community, it's not marginal at all. Dealing with issues of race, dealing with issues of gender, dealing with issues of fascism and politics and corporate power. These are the things you'll hear here on Free Speech TV that you will not hear on the corporate media, on the mainstream media, that you will not be reading in the New York Times and the Washington Post or your local newspaper. And that's why it's so important to be supporting Free Speech TV. It's one of the many reasons why it's so important. This television network and those of us on this television network so appreciate your support. Literally, you make this program possible. You make this network possible. You keep us on the air when you call 877-378-8669 or when you go to freespeech.org and make your contribution, whether it's a one-time contribution or whether it's a committing to a regular monthly, and whether that regular monthly contribution is $5 a month or $50 a month or $100, whatever works for you. Free Speech TV will make it happen. And that is the foundation of keeping this network going and keeping, the good message out there So please call now. Please go to freespeech.org now and make your contribution. Free Speech TV needs your help. They need you now. Thank you. Share the Thom Hartmann Program with your friends. Our podcast, The Hartmann Report, is absolutely free and available wherever fine podcasts are available. And the entire 3-hour podcast is available over at thomhartmann.com. So MAGA Mike and the Republicans want a religious test for people running for public office. They want to know that you are sufficiently Christian to be worthy of being elected. Right. MAGA Mike is one of these 7 mountain evangelicals. There are 7 domains where these dominionists believe that we need to have religion completely take them over. Education, religion, family, business, government and military, arts and entertainment, and the media. Seriously. This is not what Jesus was preaching when he said, give unto Caesar what is Caesar and unto God what is God's. This is the opposite, in fact, of what Jesus was teaching. It's the opposite of Matthew 25, where Jesus said the only way to get to heaven is by feeding the hungry, healing the sick, helping the poor. This is counter-Christian, anti-Christian, in fact. In fact, I think you could say it is the Antichrist's work. There's a piece about it over at HartmannReport.com. Check it out.
Inside, burning bright and true. A call to stand, a voice to raise. It's all up to you. In the heart of the chaos, in the midst of the fight, your words and your actions can turn wrong into right. Do you have that fire in the belly?
Welcome back. 35 minutes past the hour, and picking up your calls. What's on your mind today? Jim in Cleveland, Ohio. Hey, Jim, what's up?
Hi, Tom. Thanks for having me on your show. I appreciate everything you do. I'm praying for you, too.
Thank you.
I live in Cleveland, Ohio, and my voting location in a heavily Democratic area was moved 3 times.
Wow.
And what bothers me, too, is that the most important election of world history, they move it. And I think one of the things that was on the ballot was the gerrymandering issue, which to me never made sense why it was on this certain day of the most important election. That should have been earlier on, and in my opinion, it should have never been an issue to vote on.
Well, it passed, didn't it, Jim? The ban on gerrymandering? No. Oh, it was defeated?
No. It was defeated, yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that. Well, thank you. Thank you.
It was defeated. And in my opinion, it should have never been there.
I think it was defeated because the language was backwards. If you read that language on that ballot initiative, you thought the voting yes meant no or no meant yes.
I have had Republican friends tell me they didn't know what the heck it was about.
Exactly. They wrote it intentionally to be confusing. The Republican leadership.
Getting back to my point is, they were ordered 7 times to redraw those maps by the Ohio Supreme Court. Right. They never did. How were they allowed to get away with that?
Republicans just routinely break the law and say, try to hold me to account. I dare you. They just stick out their tongue and wiggle their fingers in their ears. I mean, that's what they do. Or worse.
But why? I mean,
because they worship power, and because the billionaires who support them, need that power and pay them very, very well for these efforts.
Who are the people that are supposed to hold them accountable?
Well, it's supposed to be the voters.
Law enforcement?
No, it's supposed to be the voters.
Well, yeah.
Oh, you mean when they break the law?
Right.
It's the governor. The governor is the chief law. Arguably your AG in Ohio is your chief law enforcement officer, but he reports or she reports to the governor. So it's up to the governor. And of course, Mike DeWine is not going to enforce the law against Republicans in Ohio, and never would.
Exactly. Exactly. And getting back to another point, we lost one of the best senators that probably was in the White House, Sherrod Brown, to a guy who, for whatever reason, did not want people to know that he was born in Colombia. All you had to do is look at Wikipedia, and it'll tell you that he was born in Colombia, did not become an American citizen until he was 18 years old. And hey, by the way, will be one of the richest senators in the Senate.
Right. Didn't he own car dealerships?
Yeah.
He's a used car salesman? Is your senator now instead of Sherrod Brown? I mean, that's so sad.
Yes. What I'm getting at is he lied on his commercials. He said he was first generation. He's not first generation. Mm-hmm. He was born in Colombia.
His children would be
first generation. And he did not become... I get it. His children would be. If you talk to anybody that has any Hispanic background and you look at the name, they'll say it's pronounced Morano, not Marino. Mm-hmm. And I just don't, to me, why didn't the Democratic Party, why weren't they on that?
Yeah.
Saying, look.
I can't speak to the strategy of the Democratic Party, Jim, but I can tell you that the Republicans pulled out all the stops. You had, last time around when J.D. Vance got elected and defeated Mr. Ryan, Tim Ryan.
Right.
That was because Peter Thiel came in and dropped, as I recall, $14 million into the election and just blew away Ryan's ads. So really what you've got here is the oligarchs running Ohio. Jim, thanks for the call. John in Seattle. Hey, John, what's on your mind today?
Yeah, good morning. We had a good show. Jayapal was great.
Yeah, she always is.
And I enjoyed seeing you on Joy Reid.
Yeah, thank you.
I wish you could be on that show more often.
Well, let her know.
I had a theory the other day when we had a power outage, a big storm here in Seattle. Mm-hmm. I was listening to the radio, and I found a lot of stations, and I was thinking, how could 45% of the Latino vote go to Trump? And I couldn't figure that out until finally I was thinking, when they go to construction sites, they're always blasting their radios and listening to the music and the DJs. And I thought maybe across the country for the last 4 or 5 or 3 or 4 years, they're on construction sites listening to this propaganda coming from a conservative radio station in Mexican, preaching that their jobs will be saved if they vote for Trump.
That's exactly what happened, John. There are 300 right-wing Spanish-language radio stations in the country.
Right.
And then there's another couple hundred Spanish-language stations that play music where their hosts, the DJs, the guys who talk between the songs, are explicitly right-wingers and pumping right-wing propaganda between the songs. And that was one of the biggest factors. Another was the use of social media. Social media.
And Joe Rogan, I think I can remember emailing Patty Murray about how she should get Kamala to go on the show.
Yeah.
And I
suspect Joe Rogan's influence is vastly overstated. If you subscribe to a podcast, whether you listen to it or not, it gets downloaded. Those numbers are pretty suspect in my mind. But
sure, I just thought it would have been great for her to beat him to the punch.
No, I get it. I get it, John. I get it, John. Thanks a lot for the call. Diane in Ann Arbor, Michigan. Hey, Diane, what's up?
Yeah, hi, Tom. It's very depressing to hear how we seem to have been disappointed, let down, not defended from the top to the bottom of the Democratic Party and politics.
Can you be more specific, Diane? I'm not, and I'm having a bit of a hard time hearing you. If you can get your mouth a little closer to the microphone.
Holding them to the law, like you said, and just defending what abuse they are creating to our system, our country.
Yeah.
I wonder how much respect we really.
Diane, can you hear me?
I mean,
can you hear me, Diane?
Defense system.
Diane, I'm sorry. I'm having a hard time hearing you, and you apparently can't hear me. Michelle in Kansas City, Missouri. Hey, Michelle, what's on your mind today?
Hi.
Hi, Tom. It's your update from the Show Me State of your behinds in the state of Missouri.
Okay.
A state representative, Mark Alford from Lee Summit, I guess named after Robert E. Lee, has introduced a bill to give a reward of $1,000 to anybody who turns in an undocumented person.
So it begins.
Yes, and I just got this through the Beacon, an independent political news source in Missouri. You need to subscribe to it, Missouri. The woman from Marshall, the woman from Bucyrus. And I don't know if it contains just Missourians get the bounty or if anybody can. My concern is that they're like, oh, we'll give a bounty to anybody.
Right.
People from outside will be coming in. So it begins, Tom.
Well, it depends on how much money they have, But yeah, I expect to see this repeated in state after state. I think it's going to get really, really ugly.
At least we were the leader.
I mean, this is what the Nazis did with Jews in the 30s.
And to speak to the gentleman that called yesterday about term limits, and I've spoke to this to you before, this term limits ruined my state. I used to work for the Senate Majority Leader and the Majority Leader of the House, and they were both Democrats. When they put term limits in, everything flips to Republican, and we've been nothing but regressive ever since.
Yeah.
And we have people like Mark Alford, a former news personality, is putting laws like this forward. But hey, they didn't pass the Senate rule to have duels on the Senate floor. Hey, that's progress.
That's step one. Step one, Michelle. Michelle, thank you
Tom. You have a good one.
Yeah, good talking to you. Thanks for the call, and I appreciate it. I'm glad you could hear me. 45 minutes past the hour. I'll be back with more of your calls in just a moment. Stay with us.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit ThomHartmann.com for audio and video archive.
It's the place where smart people get their news. I'll be right back with your calls. Stay with us. And welcome back. Christine in South Bend, Indiana. Hey, Christine, what's on your mind today?
Hi. Hold on one second. You're off speaker. So I don't know if I'm calling in on a wrong topic. The gentleman answering your phone, by the way, he's very good at his job. He's very kind.
Yeah, he is.
So I see today that you have a specific donation for freespeech.com, and you're addressing trans rights, correct?
Yeah, freespeech.org for Free Speech TV. And it's just, yes, the network is, across the network today, they're supporting trans rights.
Okay. And thank you so much for that, really. However, not to be too challenging, I'm a trans mom. I have an 18-year-old daughter. She just turned 18. Mm-hmm. She's been transitioning since junior high. Mm-hmm. We're talking about after COVID time, she kind of really came out. I mean, my daughter was literally putting a wig on going to junior high. She's a hero. Mm-hmm. Both her and I testified in Indiana against SB 480, which was the law that took away gender-affirming rights for minors. So on your show today, this is where I get challenging. I don't understand why nobody, including you, I don't see any trans families. I don't see anybody talking about any of it. I don't see anybody interviewing people. Like maybe you had a segment today on that. That would have been fantastic. Mm-hmm. It's such a small community, right? People don't know about it. They don't know trans people. They definitely hardly know trans families. And so I'm very disappointed that on all the independent media that I see, and I'm always appreciative when these laws are talked about, or trans people in general, but I never see any families. I never hardly see any people. I mean, what's going on in Tennessee right now, what the Supreme Court is deciding, is extremely important.
Yeah, I agree.
Donald Trump is talking about taking away trans care for adults. He has announced that. I'm very scared for my daughter. We live in Indiana. That law got passed. At first, it was on hold by a federal judge, and then they reheard it again. I can't remember if it was the 6th Circuit Court or the 7th Circuit Court, and it got passed. Right now, since we live in Indiana, I have to go into Michigan right now with my daughter for her to be able to get her care. However, Michigan just turned red, and with these promises that Donald Trump is making to this country, what am I going to do? What is she going to do?
Yeah. Well, there's Illinois, but I get your point. I am the uncle of a trans son, My brother is the father of a trans son, and and I've been watching this for, several decades now, and the challenges are substantial. The challenge in society in general is substantial. There's still so much. I was going to say stigma, but really it's just it's discrimination. I mean, and a lack of understanding. Erin, I'm forgetting Erin's last name, but Erin is a trans woman who publishes a newsletter called Erin in the Morning on Substack.
Oh, I know. I know who she is.
You know who I'm
she's
talking about.
The wife of, I think she's married to what's the Montana House representative? What's her name?
Might be. I don't recall the details of her personal life, but she's been on our program a number of times, and we'll continue to invite her on as issues come up. And I look for opportunities to highlight and talk about these things. Unfortunately, they don't happen very often. And certainly the way that Republicans were demagoguing it during the last election has, in my opinion, set back trans rights substantially.
100%.
And Elon Musk going after his own trans daughter, I think has hurt an awful lot and has hurt a lot of people. And I think that these people are responsible for a lot of suicides, frankly. Christine, I got to run. I'm sorry, I'm out of time, but I'm with you. And please give my very best to your daughter. And thank you for the call. And thank you for being a transparent, a compassionate parent. Hey, thanks so much for sharing our program and for reaching out to our stations and sponsors and letting them know that you're listening. It really means a lot to us.
You're a mean one, Mr. Trump. You govern with disdain. You stacked the court with chaos and left us all in pain, Mr. Trump. You've got a heart that's smaller than a microscopic grain.
There you go, 10 minutes before the hour here, Mean One, Mr. Trump. Yes, indeed. All right, so, just one thing I wanted to flag for you. The New York City Police Department is having a bit of a problem right now. Wanted posters are popping up on street, light posts and telephone poles around the city with the pictures of health insurance company CEOs, wanted posters. This is probably not a good sign for the direction this whole dialogue around Luigi Mangione is going. So, Bill in Sierra Blanca, Texas. Hey, Bill, what's on your mind today?
Hi, Tom. I have a little quick story about health care and how United Healthcare affected me. My mom, Gloria, as I've talked to you before, I live in West Texas, and she's, my grandparents came from Mexico, and she worked real hard, Tom, as a teacher and a professor here in West Texas and in New Mexico. Worked hard all her life, got Social Security and Medicare, and then when George Bush became president in 2000, as you know, and you've educated all of us on this, he passed Medicare Advantage to take our money out of Part C for the Medicare for these insurance companies to deny. Well, that's exactly what happened. My mother broke her hip. She was 85 years old in very good health, just a broken hip. They did the surgery successfully, but then in the hospital in El Paso, she contracted MRSA, the antibiotic-resistant
that killed my niece. It's terrible stuff.
It's horrible. It's infected in a lot of hospitals. Yep. And I noticed it was always cold in the hospital. They were trying to keep it down. But anyway, real quick, after the MRSA thing, she was there she was there a month. Well, United Healthcare and the Thomason, the county with University Medical Center, the administrators, they're from Texas Tech University that administrate our county hospital in El Paso. They said they decided along with United Healthcare to say no more treatment for Mrs. Addington. She's been here 3 weeks. Well, she got MRSA there in the hospital. So they denied her any further treatment. In the end, they just, after they weren't going to do anything, and I was here in Sierra Blanca. But anyway, they dumped her at a nursing home, and 3 days later, from the infection and from dehydration, she died.
Oh, my God.
So I can completely understand. Like, it affects me to this day. It was a preventable thing. Had she not been denied health care for the infection that she contracted in the hospital.
So the argument you're making, Bill, is that United Healthcare killed your mother. Brian Thompson killed your mother.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And I can understand the rage. I know it's wrong. Murder's a sin. I'm Catholic. I understand that it's not the way to go. But I can completely relate, because I snapped myself at the time. Just talking about it, it's very emotional to me, Tom. And at the time, I wanted some revenge at the time, but I didn't, But I quickly got over that. Of course, I didn't do anything. But I can completely relate to anybody. I don't know about this shooter, what his motives were. Right. But I can tell you that I'm one of many thousands or maybe millions of stories. But I want to thank you, Tom, for educating us, because I didn't even know that Medicare Advantage was bad until about 7 or 8 years ago, listening to you.
Yeah.
So I didn't even know. So I started putting it together, and I remember, they denied my I knew it was bad because I looked into it at the time.
How long ago did your mother die, Bill?
It's been 2014.
2014. So I should have said, how long ago was your mother killed?
Yeah, exactly.
Bill, thank you for...
Yeah, so, and the last thing real quick, Tom.
Sure.
I want to thank you, because all this media, all this stuff that's going on, they just talk about health care, and no one's mentioning Medicare Advantage except for a few people, and you're at the top. You've been doing it for years.
Yep.
And I think that's a real problem, because they're just thinking, someone signed up for United Health.
Well, that's because I don't take advertising money from insurance companies.
Advantage.
From health insurance
it's Medicare Advantage. Why isn't anyone talking about that except for maybe you and a couple of people?
Yeah. No, I get it. Bill, thank you for sharing that story. I know it had to be difficult, and I'm so sorry to hear that a health insurance company essentially killed your mother. But I appreciate your sharing the story with our listeners. Thank you. Rob in Mesa, Arizona. Hey, Rob, what's on your mind today?
Hey, just a quick note. If you were to make a superhero movie about the insurance industry, they would clearly be the villain in the plot. So, the question I want to make is, we refer to making constitutional changes all the time, and then we get kind of defeatist and say, well, you can't do it because it'll never pass the states. Well, I disagree. We got to reframe that and say, yes, we need to pass that at the federal level and get things passed that say, Constitution amendments that say money is not free speech. Basically that corporations are not people.
Right. MoveToAmend.org has been on this beat for years, and they're a great organization if you want more information about it.
Right. Well, the point is to go ahead and do that at the federal level, knowing that it's going to take state ratifications. Yeah. But then run off that. Just say, look, we passed this, and then you could make that clear in every election as to what the end goal is, because people just say, oh, I don't believe in that thing because they get misguided. But you would be able to bring it up every election at the state level, saying why.
I agree. I think when Mitt Romney said corporations are people, my friend, I think that was one of the reasons why Obama beat him. I think that hurt him.
Right, and we could remind people as to why there's so much corrupt money in it. I mean, we could actually add in there, too, hey, you can't contribute financially unless you're a registered voter.
Yeah.
I mean, no one can give money.
I get it, Rob. I get it. I completely agree, and you said it very well. Thank you very much for the call. I truly appreciate it. We're hitting the end of this hour. I'll be back with you on the other side of this break. How Trump secretly spied on House Democrats and journalists and got away with it and is planning to do it again. Stay tuned. In addition to bringing you the Thom Hartmann Program here on Free Speech TV and Video Media Online, we also have a whole set of ways you can interact with us and tools you can use to spread the word about the importance of democracy and the threats to it in our republic. First, there's your daily homework. Sue Nethercutt puts together a daily email newsletter that has a link to every story I discuss on the air, so you can find my sources and you can share them with your friends. It's free, and you can sign up at ThomHartmann.com. Second, I publish my daily take every day over at the HartmannReport.com website. That's also free if you want the daily 5 days a week rant in your inbox. No ads either. Third, we have the podcasts. There's the free 1-hour version of our daily show that's advertising supported. You can find that wherever you get your podcasts normally. And then there's also the podcast of the entire 3-hour show with no advertisements, and that's available by subscription over at thomhartmann.com. So check them all out at thomhartmann.com and hartmannreport.com. We still need your help. Here we go. We're almost toward the end here. And I don't know if you've noticed, but Free Speech TV has been theming each day of the fundraising drive. And today's theme is LGBTQ and trans rights, rights for the entire queer community. And this is something that you see so little of, sadly, I think, in the mainstream media. And Free Speech TV not only has, programming around trans rights and generally, the LGBTQ community rights, but also you see those themes and those issues across many of the programs, including this one here on Free Speech TV. So if that's close to your heart, that's another additional reason to call now, 877-378-8669, or make a meaningful contribution to Free Speech TV, particularly a monthly one if you can. With a $100 gift, they will plant a tree for reforestation. With a $200 gift, there is the Free Speech TV Cozy Kit, which includes an exclusive Free Speech TV cookie, my book, The Hidden History of American American Dream, my newest book, and another gift that will be thrown into the package. With a $1,000 gift, you get all 10 of the Hidden History series books, all autographed by the author. And while you're doing that, while you're calling 877-378-8669 or going to freespeech.org and making your donation, and please do. Please do. This is a clip of Leslie Feinberg. You may not have heard of Leslie Feinberg. She died in 2014. She wrote a book called Stone Butch Blues in 1993 that made her somewhat famous. And then this absolutely pioneering piece in 1996 called Transgender Warriors, which, according to Wikipedia, quote, laid the groundwork for much of the terminology and awareness around gender studies and was instrumental in bringing these issues to a more mainstream audience. She described herself as an American butch, lesbian, transgendered activist, communist, and author. So here's a clip of Leslie Feinberg.
Lesbian, gay, bisexual, and trans people are no strangers to police and right-wing violence. When Matthew Shepard was murdered, we marched here in the streets 10,000 strong, and we made clear that we were no less outraged over the racist lynching of James Byrd Jr. in Jasper, Texas. Our march was viciously attacked. We were beaten and arrested by the same NYPD that lynched brothers Doris Munn and Amadou Diallo. An injury to one is an injury to all. That's why we fight to free Mumia. And Mumia stands with rainbow flags. Mumia from death row called for unity to stop anti-gay murders. It took courage for him to stand up against gay bashing. Well, that's his merit. That's why he's a leader who inspires so many communities. Now we must also fight to save Jalil Abdullah Al-Amin, formerly H.Rap Brown. Georgia is now seeking his execution. And why? In order to deal a blow to the rising progressive movement. We must not let ourselves be divided. And that's why we must unite as one fist in greater numbers comes in order to deal a death blow to racism, police brutality, right-wing violence, the death penalty, and slave labor in the prison industrial complex. And we who believe in Mumia's freedom shall not rest until it comes.
That was Leslie Feinberg, and one of the people who really defined an awful lot of, the modern contemporary ways that we're looking at issues around LGBTQ and trans rights. Again, Free Speech TV is one of the few places where these sometimes, in mainstream media, they might refer to them as marginal issues. If you're a member of the queer community, it's not marginal at all. Dealing with issues of race, dealing with issues of gender, dealing with issues of fascism and politics and corporate power. These are the things you'll hear here on Free Speech TV that you will not hear on the corporate media, on the mainstream media, that you will not be reading in the New York Times and the Washington Post or your local newspaper. And that's why it's so important to be supporting Free Speech TV. It's one of the many reasons why it's so important. This television network and those of us on this television network so appreciate your support. Literally, you make this program possible. You make this network possible. You keep us on the air when you call 877-378-8669 or when you go to freespeech.org and make your contribution, whether it's a one-time contribution or whether it's a committing to a regular monthly, and whether that regular monthly contribution is $5 a month or $50 a month or $100, whatever works for you. Free Speech TV will make it happen. And that is the foundation of keeping this network going and keeping, the good message out there. So please call now. Please go to freespeech.org now and make your contribution. Free Speech TV needs your help. They need you now. Thank you.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Welcome to the third hour of our program. The Department of Justice Inspector General, the watchdog, the office that oversees the Department of Justice looking for things that might have been done wrong. These 8 years after Donald Trump first became president, has now finally told us, and they should have told us before the election, that Trump's Department of Justice under Bill Barr was spying on Democrats in Congress. Actually, they spied on a couple of Republicans as well, or at least Republican staffers. They spied on 2 Democratic members of the House. They spied on a number of Democratic and Republican staffers in the House, and they spied on several journalists. And this is all illegal. And of course, Merrick Garland is not going to do anything about it other than issue the report. You would think that somebody might go out and arrest Bill Barr, but, actually there's not, according to the report, there's not evidence that Bill Barr even knew about this, although he was the Attorney General. The responsibility should end up at his feet. But nobody's going to be held to account for this under the Merrick Garland Justice Department. Bill Barr, by the way, Mr. Horowitz, Inspector General Michael Horowitz, is the guy who was in charge of the investigation here. And he asked Bill Barr to be interviewed, and Bill Barr said, "Screw you," and refused to come in to be interviewed. So, we really don't know what this insanely corrupt former Attorney General for both George Herbert Walker Bush, who helped shut down the investigation into Ronald Reagan and George Bush's plan to screw Jimmy Carter by paying off the Iranians to hold on to the hostages in 1980. Now, that got blown up in 1992 when Bill Barr recommended that George Herbert Walker Bush pardon Caspar Weinberger and all the other people associated with that. But And then, of course, he was Trump's attorney general, and he heavily censored, and it's still redacted to this day, which still blows my mind. Where is Merrick Garland on this? The Mueller report. But anyhow, the Justice Department during Donald Trump's first term failed to comply with its own procedures when it sought journalists' phone and email records in leak investigations. This report was released yesterday. It swept up the records of 43 congressional staffers and 2 Democratic House members. There's no evidence that they had approval from Bill Barr in advance, which means that it was really wrong. Horowitz wrote, again, this is an employee of the Justice Department, the Inspector General. He wrote, quote, obtaining the records of lawmakers and their staff during criminal investigations, quote, risks chilling Congress's ability to conduct oversight of the executive branch. Gee, you think? And like I said, Bill Barr told Mr. Horowitz where he could stuff it. And apparently the 2 Democratic members of Congress who got spied upon were Adam Schiff and Eric Swalwell. Adam Schiff, of course, was on the January 6th committee and was the lead prosecutor for one of Trump's impeachments. And Eric Swalwell is one of the more outspoken Democrats who loves to tweak the noses of Republicans and call them out and all those sorts of things. So, surprise, surprise, right? And I got just a fascinating geeky science for you. You know, I'm a big fan of walking, of just of exercise. Keep yourself alive, keep yourself healthy. And if you can't walk, there's obviously all kinds of other exercise that you can do with machines and push-ups and whatever. But this was a study that looked at moderate to vigorous activity, 30 minutes. This was done by the University College London. It was a study of 76 older adults. The youngest was 50. The oldest was 83. And, what they did was they hooked them up with a accelerometer. An accelerometer, that's the thing. There's one in your Apple Watch if you have one. If you take a walk, it'll tap you on the wrist and say, "Hey, do you want me to record the walk?" Well, how does it know that you're walking? It's got an accelerometer. An accelerometer measures basically, acceleration and gravity, and so it tells somebody how active you are basically. So they hooked these people up with they wore 24/7 for 8 days. To track their sleep and their physical activity. And each day they were given simple cognitive tests to probe their attention, their memory, and their processing speed, among other faculties. And what their results reveal, and I'll just quote this, each 30-minute increase in moderate to vigorous physical activity on the previous day. In other words, did you take a half-hour-long walk yesterday? A half hour is about 2 miles. 30 minutes of moderate to vigorous physical activity on the previous day corresponded with a 2 to 5% increase in episodic and working memory scores the following day. They also found that each 30-minute increase in sedentary behavior, sitting on the couch watching TV or playing on your computer, was associated with a measurable drop in working memory scores the next day. So get off your butt after the show, of course, and get out there. All righty, what's on your mind today? Let's talk about the issues of the day here. Paul in Ambler, Pennsylvania. Hey, Paul, what's up?
Hi, Tom. I wanted to address something about the major healthcare companies, which would include their senior level chief executive officers, in finance and operations and so on and so forth. If you go to any of their websites, you'll find they have a mission statement, and this is common with all corporations. Even if you go into business as a one-man shop, you'll get advice.
Every company I've ever started, we had a mission statement for.
Yeah, it's pretty standard. So yeah, so if you go to the United Healthcare, you're going to find something that's very glorious. So they're going to provide quality health care to everybody, and that it's affordable, and that they will empower people with information and coordinate with the healthcare providers, the doctors, and the hospitals. And it basically sounds like the kingdom of God on earth.
Right. In other words, they have a mission statement that was written by their PR team, not by their bean counters.
Yeah, it was written by Himmler. So. At any rate, the biggest healthcare issue, I would say, and I think you and many people would agree, is the Supreme Court decision allowing abortion to be completely outlawed and giving the decision-making power up to the states. Humana, Aetna, all these companies, they provide abortion services that will be paid for in the case of rape, in the case of incest, in the case of a threat to the life of the mother.
They don't provide the services; they pay for the services. But yes,
right. But they allow for it. They're providers in the sense that they finance it. Right. However, they then have the caveat: state and local laws you have to be looked into, because in some cases we can't provide our insurance services under those circumstances. Now, you would think if there was a major health issue for over half the population, which women are, and they're being systematically denied in state after state access to that health care, to the point where they're documenting women bleeding to death in hospital emergency room parking lots because no one will come out and touch them. You would think that the loss of revenue and the hurt to their sacred duty to do God's work, as outlined in their mission statements, you'd think somebody would step up and say something somewhere, somehow, but it's not there.
Yeah.
It's simply absent. Yeah. So people know this, and they see this, and, as they used to say, you don't need a weatherman to know which way the wind blows. People don't need PhDs to know that they're being treated like crap, and especially when it's their health, especially if their back is in pain, especially if they have terrible infections, and on and on and on and on. I mean, we can go into a million stories like this. You don't even need the news. I don't need the news to know the people in my family that are sick, because we're always in touch with one another. We know when someone's sick, when someone's in the hospital, when someone has cancer.
So what's your point, Paul?
The fact these healthcare CEOs have shown no sympathy to the single largest political health issue, denying abortion health care, and to the point where women are dying and bleeding to death. Where were these men to say something for their constituents? Where were these men providing it?
But yeah, I get your argument. I do think, though, that the decisions to deny care are not being made by the health insurance companies, they're being made by the physicians and hospitals. But I get your point. Thank you.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
16 minutes past the hour. Back with your calls in just a moment. Stay with us. And welcome back. Jaime in Houston, Texas. Hey, Jaime, what's on your mind today? Thanks for watching Free Speech.
Hey, Tom.
Hey.
Yeah, well, I was calling about the Meet the Press Sunday interview.
Mm-hmm. With Trump?
And, I mean, where he decides to say, the January 6th committee should be jailed for what they did. And Kristen Welker asked, I guess, an obvious question to confirm, are you really saying they should go to jail? And he said, yes, for what they did. My problem is, the next obvious question would be, well, Mr. President, what did he do? What did they do? But they never asked that.
What do you mean?
You said that they should go to jail for what they did. Great. What did they do that merits going to jail?
Well, what they did is they offended His Royal Highness.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, seriously?
I mean, you and I know that.
They called out his lies. They called out his bizarre behavior. They called out his treason. They offended and embarrassed His Royal Highness Donald Trump, and he is not going to tolerate that. He is going to punish them.
No, I can see all that from the narcissistic way he is, but I mean, it's like, you want to say it, the press should say, okay, exactly what legally, are you basing this on?
I agree with you, Jaime, and I think that the press has really dropped the ball in so many ways over the last, particularly over the last 10 years or so. It's just all been about, how do we suck up to Republicans so that they'll continue to show up on our Sunday morning shows. It's just disgusting. Mm-hmm. Jaime, thank you very much. Michael in San Bernardino, California. Hey, Michael. Thanks for watching Free Speech. What's up?
Hi, Tom. A quick name change before my question. There are no liberals or conservatives. They're all progressives or regressives.
Okay.
So now that Biden is king for the next 30 days, isn't there something he could nationalize, like banks or oil or SpaceX?
SpaceX is a good suggestion. I don't know how extensive his power is in that regard, and I don't know how it would play out. What I do know is that he's such an institutionalist, and Merrick Garland, I think, is kind of a reflection. He's been really good on the economy. He's been really good on workers' rights and things like that, but he has been a wimp at taking on Republicans. And I think it's just a real sad thing. It's a real shame. And
how hard would it be to nationalize something?
Well, it can be done by the president by executive order. Obama nationalized a number of companies. During World War II, Franklin Delano Roosevelt nationalized hundreds of companies, including large parts of the oil and tire industry. Obama nationalized the auto industry, actually. He nationalized GM and Chrysler for 1 year, basically, and then sold them back into the private market. So I've written about this before. There's a long history of nationalization in the United States. That's why I've been arguing for years we should nationalize the oil industry. And then just stop them from funding climate denial. But nobody wants to take that seriously. Michael, thank you for the call. It is something a president can do, and has been done. And excellent point, Michael. Thank you very much. 20 minutes past the hour. I'll be right back with you. Missed my opening rant today? It's usually published over at HartmannReport.com, where you can read it and share it with your friends for free. Check it out, HartmannReport.com.
I'm dreaming of a bright Christmas where every culture shares delight, with tables full of joy and laughter, and every heart feels warm tonight.
Welcome back. 21 minutes past the hour. Picking up your calls here. Lewis in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. Hey, Lewis, what's up?
Hey, Tom, how are you?
I'm great.
Hey, I need you to talk. Oh, good. I need you to talk me out the letter, Tom. I'm worried about the media. Part of the reason why Trump got in, I believe, was because the media was so one-sided or so intimidated by him. And now that he's actually been elected, they're not going to truthfully tell his stories. Anything that happens good is going to be his fault. Anything that happens bad is going to be Biden's fault. He's even taking credit for things that Biden's done. He's taking credit for it now. He's not even in the White House. And how do we get the media to tell the truth, or what do we do to counter whatever stories they don't tell? Because just putting it out on the radio or social media is not reaching all the people it needs to reach.
Well,
it needs to be a conservative
not only that,
effort.
The liars and BS artists are also on social media. In fact, they basically run it over on Twitter.
Exactly. So how can we? I mean, how can we counteract the negative impacts from the media?
I think that we need to do away with Section 230 of the Telecommunications Act of 1996, which says that Twitter and Facebook have no responsibility for the content on their platforms. They operate in a law-free zone, whereas newspapers don't. I mean, you know, if you were to publish on the website of the New York Times some of the things that get published on Facebook and Twitter every day, there would be an enforcement action against them. And
as long as Trump's in the White House, that's not going to happen.
No, I get that. You know, we're just going to have to all speak out as loudly as we can and participate as much as we can. This is going to have to be basically a grassroots-driven, you know, I'd say a guerrilla action, except that implies violence, and I don't mean it in that sense. But you know, guerrilla news or guerrilla truth-telling or something like that. But you know, and promote all the progressive media out there. There is some good progressive media out there, and we all need to be sharing that with our friends and neighbors. So, Louis, I got to move on.
It sounds like we're going to be losing. Okay, thank you, Tom.
Yeah, good talking to you. Darla in Bremerton, Washington. Hey, Darla, what's up?
Hi, Tom. First off, I want to say I love your program. Listen to you almost every morning, and glad there's voices out there like yours.
Okay, thank you. Is there a butt coming?
Just a question.
Okay.
Is there any way that Biden can protect Social Security and Medicare?
I don't think so. Both of them are the creatures of Congress. They were created by Congress. They can be modified by Congress. And they're both run by the Medicare, you know, the director of CMS, and which, if Trump gets his way, will be Dr. Oz, who has already said that he doesn't think that those programs should exist as public entities. They should be private, you know, entirely private entities. So, no, I don't think there's any way to stop him outside of public opinion, just outrageous public opinion. Keep in mind, George W. Bush, when he won the 2004 election, went on a tour. It was supposed to be a 25, 30-city tour in 2006, in the spring of 2006, promoting his you know, Social Security Advantage program. He had already gotten Medicare Advantage passed 2 years earlier, and he, you know, to privatize Medicare, and now he wanted to privatize Social Security. And the more he talked about it, the less popular he became, and it was doing such a great job of crashing his approval numbers that he just gave up. He just stopped doing it in the middle of the tour. He visited like, you know, 8 or 10 cities, and that was it. He just quit talking about it, and just that was the end of the discussion. And it was because of public opinion. So I think that's what we've got to do, is we've got to be that public opinion, darling.
Right. And it's hard enough. The COLA increase was terrible this year, and it's taken away what and then Medicare went up another $10. Yeah. So it just, but anyway, I appreciate it, Tom. Keep up the good work, and
Thanks,
we'll
Darla.
keep our voices out there.
There you go. Thank you. John in Somerset, New York. Hey, John, you got a quick one?
No, actually, I don't. It's Kentucky, sir.
Oh, Somerset, Kentucky. You're right. It is.
That's right. No,
well, if you don't have a quick one, let me just put you on hold then, and I'll pick you up on the other side of the break, because I've only got 35 seconds here. I do think that, well, actually, here, this is worth noting. The health insurance industry has made $371 billion in profits since 2010 in the passage of the Medicare, or the Affordable Care Act. The Affordable Care Act, of course, was originally written by the Heritage Foundation. It was a conservative Republican strategy to privatize, you know, to offer health care to everybody in the country, but to do it on a privatized basis, to do it through largely for-profit health insurance companies. $371 billion in profit, not revenue, profit. Mind-boggling. I'll be back with your calls on the other side of the break. We'll pick up John first, and we'll go on from there. Stay with us.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
Talk media for the rest of us. Right back with your calls in just a minute. We still need your help. Here we go. We're almost toward the end here. And I don't know if you've noticed, but Free Speech TV has been theming each day of the fundraising drive. And today's theme is LGBTQ and trans rights, rights for the entire queer community. And this is something that you see so little of, sadly, I think, in the mainstream media. And Free Speech TV not only has, programming around trans rights and generally, the LGBTQ community rights, but also you see those themes and those issues across many of the programs, including this one here on Free Speech TV. So if that's close to your heart, that's another additional reason to call now, 877-378-8669, or make a meaningful contribution to Free Speech TV, particularly a monthly one if you can. With a $100 gift, they will plant a tree for reforestation. With a $200 gift, there is the Free Speech TV Cozy Kit, which includes an exclusive Free Speech TV cookie, my book, The Hidden History of American American Dream, my newest book, and another gift that will be thrown into the package. With a $1,000 gift, you get all 10 of the Hidden History series books, all autographed by the author. And while you're doing that, while you're calling 877-378-8669 or going to freespeech.org and making your donation, and please do. Please do. This is a clip of Leslie Feinberg. You may not have heard of Leslie Feinberg. She died in 2014. She wrote a book called Stone Butch Blues in 1993 that made her somewhat famous. And then this absolutely pioneering piece in 1996 called Transgender Warriors, which, according to Wikipedia, quote, laid the groundwork for much of the terminology and awareness around gender studies and was instrumental in bringing these issues to a more mainstream audience. She described herself as an American butch, lesbian, transgendered activist, communist, and author. So here's a clip of Leslie Feinberg.
Lesbian, gay, bisexual, and trans people are no strangers to police and right-wing violence. When Matthew Shepard was murdered, we marched here in the streets 10,000 strong, and we made clear that we were no less outraged over the racist lynching of James Byrd Jr. in Jasper, Texas. Our march was viciously attacked. We were beaten and arrested by the same NYPD that lynched brothers Doris Lund and Amadou Diallo. An injury to one is an injury to all. That's why we fight to free Mumia. And Mumia stands with rainbow flags. Mumia from death row called for unity to stop anti-gay murders. It took courage for him to stand up against gay bashing, but that's his metal. That's why he's a leader who inspires so many communities. Now we must also fight to save Jalil Abdullah Al-Amin, formerly H.R. Brown. Georgia is now seeking his execution. And why? In order to deal a blow to the rising progressive movement. We must not let ourselves be divided. And that's why we must unite as one fist in greater numbers in order to deal a death blow to racism, police brutality, right-wing violence, the death penalty, and slave labor in the prison industrial complex. And we who believe in Mumia's freedom shall not rest until it comes.
That was Leslie Feinberg, and one of the people who really defined an awful lot of, the modern contemporary ways that we're looking at issues around LGBTQ and trans rights. Again, Free Speech TV is one of the few places where these sometimes, in mainstream media, they might refer to them as marginal issues. If you're a member of the queer community, it's not marginal at all. Dealing with issues of race, dealing with issues of gender, dealing with issues of fascism and politics and corporate power. These are the things you'll hear here on Free Speech TV that you will not hear on the corporate media, on the mainstream media, that you will not be reading in the New York Times and the Washington Post or your local newspaper. And that's why it's so important to be supporting Free Speech TV. It's one of the many reasons why it's so important. This television network and those of us on this television network so appreciate your support. Literally, you make this program possible. You make this network possible. You keep us on the air when you call 877-378-8669 or when you go to freespeech.org and make your contribution, whether it's a one-time contribution or whether it's a committing to a regular monthly, and whether that regular monthly contribution is $5 a month or $50 a month or $100, whatever works for you. Free Speech TV will make it happen. And that is the foundation of keeping this network going and keeping, the good message out there. So please call now. Please go to freespeech.org now and make your contribution. Free Speech TV needs your help. They need you now. Thank you. We can do this again. We just have to raise taxes on rich people. It's pretty straightforward. There's a whole article about it over at HartmannReport.com. Check it out.
In the heart of every nation, where freedom's flame ignites, there's a beacon shining brightly in the darkest nights.
Welcome back. 35 minutes past the hour. Picking up your calls here. Diane in Petaluma, California. Hey, Diane, what's on your mind today?
Oh, that's Dwayne, Tom.
Oh, Dwayne, I'm sorry. I've got to stop just glancing and start reading. My apologies, Dwayne.
Oh, no problem. What I wanted to say, first of all, is it's pretty clear that a man who's very bright let himself be captured. I guess Luigi was just want to make sure he didn't get shot. My assumption, of course, is that his medical condition he couldn't get taken care of, and he'll be bringing a lawsuit to force the prison system to give him the medical care he was denied.
I doubt that was his motive. His family could have easily bought him any medical care they wanted. He's the son of multi-millionaires. And the family owns a right-wing radio station. They own a couple of country clubs. They own a health facility, several apparently nursing homes. They're very rich. They're just very rich.
But is he estranged from them?
I don't know, but yeah.
Moving on.
Yeah.
That was just my thought.
Yeah.
That's one way to get the medical care you need is simply to figure a way to get into jail.
The problem is the medical care in prison sucks. And he would have to be smart enough to know that. The guy's got a master's degree from Penn,
The other thing I would like to comment on is that Trump seems to be of the opinion that he's going to use a portion of the 14th Amendment to disqualify citizenship. And he wants the 14th to be interpreted just the way he wants. And I think we should be concerned with, and I would have appreciated it, if you would ask your congressional guest today whether or not she's going to say, let's not count the Trump electoral vote votes, being he's an insurrectionist. I'm a 14-3 person, and that's what I'd love to see.
Yeah, it's not going to happen. I can just tell you. But
if a number, all it takes is a dozen members of Congress to stand up and do it, and
that doesn't stop the process anymore. Not since the Electoral Count Act was passed.
And the Electoral Count Act requires how many people to object? How many members of Congress?
I don't recall, but the objection would be rapidly overruled by the majority, and the Republicans will be in the majority when that happens. So,
and all those
they're in the majority right now in the House.
All those who vote to overturn that would be the targets for the 2 years from now in the election.
I fully expect that in 2026 you're going to see the House of Representatives at the very least go back to the Democrats in response
in order to find out which ones
people are going to be doing.
Yeah, in order to find out which ones to go after, to force them to declare themselves right here and now on the, let's see, what date is that? That's January 6th. It might be interesting to tune in tomorrow. Today's the day they're supposed to be certifying the election.
Yeah. What your comment caused me to think of, Dwayne, is that Trump has already gotten the Supreme Court to rule that the 14th Amendment doesn't say what it says. But
the 14th Amendment,
Section 3, where it says that if you commit an insurrection, you can't hold public office, they interpreted that in a way that I think is completely unconstitutional. So if he's going to also say under the 14th Amendment that birthright citizenship is not a thing, my guess is he's going to try and do it and then let the Supreme Court rule on it. And I'm concerned that the Supreme Court will say, oh yeah, the 14th Amendment doesn't say what it means in that regard either. And there, I think, we could face some real significant weirdness.
Well, you think the Democratic Party will get concerned with this 14-3 if we have some action on December 17th when the electors meet?
No, I want them to. I would love them to. I wish they would. But I can tell you right now, they're not going to do it, Dwayne. Dwayne, thanks for the call. Larry in Sonoma, California. Hey, Larry, what's up?
Good morning. I was watching the CBS News morning edition last weekend, and they were covering the murder in New York. Mm-hmm. And they did little clips of people had issues with the coverage, and they showed 4 or 5 clips of how they gotten messed over by the Medicare Plus. Mm-hmm. And so this investigative reporter was doing their little thing, and they talked about how the Medicare Plus is so expensive. Advantage is so expensive. And then very quietly, kind of under their breath, mentioned also more expensive than it is in Europe. Well, it just seems to me that the corporate is going to support the corporate, and they failed to mention that Medicare does not have that filter of the company's CEOs saying it's okay to have this procedure or not to have a procedure.
Correct.
And that's what most of the people had issues with. And it just seems that the corporates are going to support the corporates.
I agree. And, the Medicare Advantage industry drops millions, probably hundreds of millions of dollars into the media coffer every open enrollment period, every October through December, and, much to my chagrin. And I think that that's one of the big factors that these media outlets are considering when they're deciding not to talk about what's really going on with Medicare Advantage and how we're all being ripped off by these companies. I'm with you, Larry. Thank you. John in Somerset, Kentucky. Hey, John, apologies for not coming right straight back to you. I forgot that I'd put you on hold. I'll just own it. My apologies, John.
No need, Tom. Thank you. I appreciate the extra time. Can I just make a quick comment? I want to thank you, your wife, and your staff for everything you guys do. God, you're so valuable to me and your audience. I feel privileged just to be a member.
Well, that's very kind of you. Thank you. What'd you call about?
Anyways, this CEO thing. Something making sense. Okay, and I'm not one to spread conspiracies or anything, but this fella Brian Robertson, He's a high school dropout.
Brian Thompson,
started
the CEO of United Healthcare.
Usually, I'm sorry?
It's Brian Thompson, the CEO of United Healthcare, if that's who you're talking about.
I'm sorry, yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Wow, okay, so maybe I'm not even talking about the same guy. I'm pretty sure I am.
So you looked up a different name?
Word.
Yeah,
well,
what's interesting right now, John. I've been watching. I keep one of the networks on in the studio just so that I can see if news is breaking. For example, Chris Wray just announced that at the end of the Biden administration, he's going to step down to pave the way for Donald Trump to put in somebody to replace him. But earlier, the big story on CNN and MSNBC was that in New York, and across the country, that industry after industry is going, oh my God, are they going to come after our CEOs? And the easy answer is no. Back in the 20s and 30s, when the big banks literally, just robbed America, my mother never forgot this because her family was fairly wealthy in 1920, and they lost everything. I mean, she grew up in poverty because she was born in the 1930s. Because of the Great Depression, because the banks that held all their money, the money just vanished. And so when you look at the 20s and 30s, who were America's heroes? It was the bank robbers. And who were what was the industry that was the hated by Americans? It was the banks, because they'd ripped us all off. Today, it's the health insurance industry. And some parts of the hospital industry and the medical industry as well, and the drug companies. And this is not going to spread. This is, you're not going to see, auto industry executives, or telephone company executives being hunted down. But health insurance executives probably should have security. But anyway, John, I jumped in there while you seemed to be reorganizing your thoughts. Did you want to continue?
Yeah, I think I had a problem. I was reading two different things.
Oh, so you got the wrong CEO. Okay.
Yeah, this was an article about holacracy, and it was Brian Robertson, and it's something that I felt was really important.
Yeah.
It's a new way of running a corporation. It's like it's decentralizing power, and they have a constitution. And it sounds like a really good way to do it. And yes, it would probably ruffle some.
Yeah. And United Healthcare.
This wasn't a random cycle, but a hit.
Yeah.
Like some.
No, I get it, John. And I don't think you're going to see our health insurance companies run that way any day soon. John, thanks for the call. There are these also corporations called B corporations, beneficent corporations. Now, it varies from state to state with the state corporate laws, but they're run for the benefit of the public, without being anonymous, which is interesting.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit ThomHartmann.com for audio and video archives.
I'll be right back with more of your calls in just a moment. Stay with us. And welcome back. Sean in Hesperia, California. You are on the air. Sean, what's up?
Hey, how are you doing, Tom? I've been talking with you in a while. Just wanted to let you know I got over it within 12 hours and gave my vote where it needed to go correctly. But the reason that I'm calling today is I wanted to share just a little bit about what kind of little I'm going through right now. I've been with my company for about 6.5 years, and I haven't had to really use my medical besides going to the regular doctor's appointment until I found out I've developed this, what they call carpal tunnel, and I have to have surgery recently. I have not had to do all of the leg work on my own. The company is New York Life. I do have short-term disability, and what surprised me is the fact that they denied me for my short-term, but then turned around and said, oh, that goes in collaboration with my FMLA here in California. So they never got approval for the FMLA, only the short-term disability. So I'm calling these people back and saying, what do you need? No, my job didn't deny me. I did not take workers' comp. I do not get any pay. And then I said, well, give me the paperwork so we can get it to the doctor, because they never sent over the paperwork. They sent it to the wrong doctor. When I did receive the paperwork, when I looked at it on their portal, because remember, I never received the denial short-term disability paperwork. So when I did receive the paperwork, I looked through it and I said, I'm not pregnant. And I don't think at 59 years old that I will be looking in, that this condition is related to pregnancy. So I had to get back on the phone and call them for them to direct me to the correct paper.
Wow.
Now, the funny thing of all of this is, Tom, they had pre-op and everything with me prior to my surgery being scheduled for 5:30 a.m. Told me don't bring anything but my ID. I get there, get checked in, and the young lady says, oh, you have a copay of $3,800. If you pay it right now, then it will be $38. But if not, then it's going to go up to $3,900 something dollars. So I had to call back and I had to negotiate that price, which my insurance company gives us extra to pay for. So in saying all of this, it's like, you know, I think this young man, it was something far way more than his back
You're talking
injury.
about Luigi?
Yes, I think he was, because he referred to what was that, the Unabomber or someone. So that just kind of let.
Well, the Unabomber story is, I think, has been blown way out of proportion by the media. He had read the Unabomber's book back a decade ago and said this guy has some good analysis, essentially, of society's problems. I wouldn't disagree with that, actually. That was a fairly anodyne, you know, commentary. I don't think he's a Unabomber or he's nuts. I think he was driven crazy by his back pain and by his battle, apparently, with United Healthcare, although we don't know for sure.
Yes. Well, I just have to say I wish that family, luck, wish them well of losing the CEO. Under no circumstances we want to lose anyone.
Yeah.
But thank you, Tom. I really appreciate it. But the healthcare industry, it has to get a lot better.
I agree.
Because I'm paying into insurance and just now using it, and I'm doing their work for them.
There you go,
but
Sean.
Thank you, Tom. And it's good talking with you again. You have a good day.
Thanks. Back at you, Sean. Thank you for the call. It's 10 minutes before the hour. I'll be right back with your calls in just a minute. Stay with us. Hey, thanks so much for sharing our program and for reaching out to our stations and sponsors and letting them know that you're listening. It really means a lot to us.
I really can't stay. It's cold outside. Trump won't go away. Liberals, you've nowhere to hide. His tweets are so grim. He's just warming up again. The chaos is great.
Welcome back. 51 minutes past the hour. Picking up your calls here. Rhonda in Charleston, West Virginia. Hey, Rhonda, what's up?
Hey, I've got a question. I've not heard anybody bring this up. I don't condone violence, but considering the CEO murders, I've not heard a comparison. I need an analogy, actually, of the Kyle Rittenhouse and the Luigi Mangione incident. And also focusing, I think we're focusing on this wrong. I think instead of looking at the murders, because I know that CNN is bringing out he's wealthy and everything, we're not talking about the victims and the damage to society that the victims has done. And I've not heard anybody bring that up, and maybe you can help me figure that out.
In other words, when Kyle Rittenhouse killed two white Black Lives Matter protesters and blew the upper arm off a third, we never heard any of the stories of those three people who were the victims of Kyle Rittenhouse. All we heard about was Kyle Rittenhouse and his mother and what a rough life he had and all this other BS. In this case, obviously Luigi Mangioni's bio is kind of leaking out slowly, but we heard an awful lot about Brian Thompson and what a wonderful man he is and what a family he has. I didn't see any mention. I believe he's estranged from his wife, but at least I've read that in the media. Whether it's true or not, I can't speak to. Is that the point you're making, Rhonda?
Yeah, I mean, well, for Rittenhouse, he actually, attended a protest he didn't agree with. Mm-hmm. He came with high-powered rifles. I mean, and obviously, I mean, there had to be something nefarious there. I don't think he was there to help the police. Maybe I'm confused.
Well, he was walking with the police. I mean, the police were like, "Yeah, go get him, boy."
Yeah.
Seriously, he talked to several cops. I mean, he was walking around with an AR-15, and they were fine with it.
Yeah, and considering the victims and the damage that they are doing to society, I'm a little confused, and I think the media and some of the mainstream media that I was always so dependent on has just come out really just trying to despair of this guy. And don't get me wrong, I think what he did was horrible, but at the same time, I have a feeling we're going to see him go to prison for the rest of his life, and Cal Rittenhouse is walking around going to bars, and
raising money.
Yeah, exactly. And he's somewhat their hero, or was in the past.
Yeah, he still is. The Republican members of Congress do fundraisers. If you go shoot your gun with Kyle, and you pay $1,000 for the privilege, and they split the money with Kyle Rittenhouse. He's been doing fundraisers with the Republicans for a couple of years now.
Yeah, that's I've never seen anybody bring that up yet.
I doubt that you'll ever see Democrats doing fundraisers with Luigi Mangione, but I think your side-by-side comparison, Rhonda, is not just shocking but pretty cogent.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's a good one. Rhonda, thank you.
I hope they bring that up. I hope I hear more comparisons.
Yeah, Me too. Thank you very much. Jeannie in Middleton, Wisconsin. Hey, Jeannie, what's up?
Hi, I wanted to run a couple things by you. I'm constantly hearing about the idea how terrible Democrats are as messaging. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that I learned a long time ago is when you have an issue to address, that you have kind of two choices. Either you can choose the process that you're going to follow, or you can identify a target or an outcome and go after that. But you can't have it both ways. And so my comment is, it appears that the Democrats have chosen the approach of process, because oftentimes you'll hear about, well, the parliamentarians said this, and the Senate rules say that, and the whole bit. Mm-hmm. On the other hand, the Republicans says, we could care less about the process. We want the outcome. We want manufacturing to come back to the United States, or whatever. Pick something.
That's a great point.
So therefore, I'm saying to myself, who's going to tell these Democrats to get off this process idea and really start focusing on the target of what we're after? Like, I think you and I would both agree that, we would like to have affordable health care, a single-payer system in the United States. So go for the target, and let's just work along the way through the process.
Right. Let's make sure everybody in America has affordable health care.
But identify, you and I could easily identify, let's say 3 outcomes that we feel are needed. We want people to have health care. We want people to have housing. We want people to have, food. Jobs.
Yeah, and jobs, yeah.
Yeah, but the point being is pick 3 things. And so, therefore, that's my comment, is the idea, who's going to tell the Democrats that we need to start focusing on the target and less so on the process?
Well, Jeannie, you just did. I guarantee you there's some Democrats listening, and I will continue to carry that message. It's consistent with the message that I've been promoting for a long, long time. And, we really do need to be going after these goals. So, Jeannie, thank you very much for the call. I appreciate it.
I'm not trying.
I'm sorry, Jeannie, I'm out of time. Pardon me. We're hitting the end of the show here. Thanks so much for being with us today. We'll be back tomorrow, same time, same place. In the meantime, don't forget, democracy is not a spectator sport. It requires all of us. That includes you. So get out there, get active, tag, you're it. Have a great afternoon. Be good to yourself and the folks around you. Stay safe, and I'll catch up with you tomorrow. we still need your help. Here we go. We're almost toward the end here. And I don't know if you've noticed, but Free Speech TV has been theming each day of the fundraising drive. And today's theme is LGBTQ and trans rights, rights for the entire queer community. And this is something that you see so little of, sadly, I think, in the mainstream media. And Free Speech TV not only has, programming around trans rights and generally, the LGBTQ community rights, but also you see those themes and those issues across many of the programs, including this one here on Free Speech TV. So if that's close to your heart, that's another additional reason to call now, 877-378-8669, or make a meaningful contribution to Free Speech TV, particularly a monthly one if you can. With a $100 gift, they will plant a tree for reforestation. With a $200 gift, there is the Free Speech TV Cozy Kit, which includes an exclusive Free Speech TV cookie, my book, The Hidden History of American Democracy, American Dream, my newest book, and another gift that will be thrown into the package. With a $1,000 gift, you get all 10 of the Hidden History series books, all autographed by the author. And while you're doing that, while you're calling 877-378-8669 or going to freespeech.org and making your donation, and please do. Please do. This is a clip of Leslie Feinberg. You may not have heard of Leslie Feinberg. She died in 2014. She wrote a book called Stone Butch Blues in 1993 that made her somewhat famous. And then this absolutely pioneering piece in 1996 called Transgender Warriors, which, according to Wikipedia, quote, laid the groundwork for much of the terminology and awareness around gender studies and was instrumental in bringing these issues to a more mainstream audience. She described herself as an American butch, lesbian, transgendered activist, communist, and author. So here's a clip of Leslie Feinberg.
Lesbian, gay, bisexual, and trans people are no strangers to police and right-wing violence. When Matthew Shepard was murdered, we marched here in the streets 10,000 strong, and we made clear that we were no less outraged over the racist lynching of James Byrd Jr. in Jasper, Texas. Our march was viciously attacked. We were beaten and arrested by the same NYPD that lynched brothers Doris Lund and Amadou Diallo. An injury to one is an injury to all. That's why we fight to free Mumia. And Mumia stands with rainbow flags. Mumia from death row called for unity to stop anti-gay murders. It took courage for him to stand up against gay bashing. Well, that's his method. That's why he's a leader who inspires so many communities. Now we must also fight to save Jalil Abdullah Al-Amin, formerly H.Rap Brown. Georgia is now seeking his execution. And why? In order to deal a blow to the rising progressive movement. We must not let ourselves be divided. And that's why we must unite as one fist in greater numbers in order to deal a death blow to racism, police brutality, right-wing violence, the death penalty, and slave labor in the prison industrial complex. And we who believe in Mumia's freedom shall not rest until it comes.
That was Leslie Feinberg, and one of the people who really defined an awful lot of